Okay. Thank you, everybody. This evening's public hearing, we have one public hearing. It's a continuation, the Red Bulls Arena. Sony, do you want to read the application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is application PBO 622 Red Bulls Arena Inc. for a site plan, block 9101, lots 4 and 5, 101-103 Columbia Road in the OL 40 PUD zone. This is a continuation from August 15, September 12, and September 28th public hearings. Applicant proposes to construct the New York Red Bulls training facility for professionals, academy, and youth sports team to include outdoor fields, buildings used for administrative and business office, gymnasiums and field houses, athletic training and fitness, classrooms, dormitories, and indoor field, food service operation, physical therapy, and auxiliary facilities related to the athletic training.
Thank you. Mr. Flynn, do you want to lead off with regard to Mr. Rastiopi?
I can sort of tell the board where the applicant left off and what they
Thank
should do
you.
next.
Okay.
So my understanding, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we did get through the 3 hearings, a few witnesses. We had their president testify. We had Mr. Lade, senior manager of alumni and player relations, testify. Then they went through Mr. Amorosa's testimony, who provided an overview of the project. We had a couple nights of Mr. Barrington, their civil engineer's testimony. And then I believe all of them, all 4 of those witnesses were subject to both board question and comment and public questioning. And then where we left off was Mr. Amorosa, I believe, returned to discuss the typical schedules that the applicant would do in terms of people circulating the site. I do not believe we finished public question of that witness, and I believe that's where we're going to lead off tonight.
Right. So if you could give like a 5 or 10 minute summary of where we were, and then we can proceed right into questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Give me a second here while I just pull up one of the. It's up already. Just need to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one additional thing, because I am relying on a colleague's notes tonight, if you could ask a member of the public who gets up to question and comment to identify if they've already spoken before, so that we can make sure we swear them when we get them.
I don't think we had any.
Not on this witness.
Not on this witness. Okay.
Right.
Question.
Okay. Great.
We had board questions, but I don't think from the public.
No public questions yet for Mr. Amorosa.
Okay, great.
Right.
So, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just as a kind of a brief summary of where we were at the end of last meeting, I had presented 4 sample schedules for one schedule for each of the 4 seasons, one that was in the fall, winter, spring, and summer, and just kind of gave some detail as to what activities would be occurring on site, and indicating that these are schedules that were developed off of the master schedules of the current training facility. So these are actual events that occurred in the past year at this at the Hanover facility, and would be anticipated to be the same activities in the same timeframes that would occur at the proposed training facility. One of the key things that we tried to point out is that even though, you know, this, obviously the winter schedule is the lightest schedule, the fall schedule starts to pick up a little bit more. Spring and summer are obviously the heaviest schedules. But one of the key things that we pointed out is that of all of the activities that are occurring throughout the week, the population of players and coaches that would be on the fields during those times, and the maximum time would be somewhere between 100 and 150, and depending on what activities were occurring, they would be on different fields at different times. So there would not be not all fields would be in use at the same time. There could be concurrent fields in use by the same group of players. One thing I indicated is that the MLS professional team generally practices on 2 fields. They do that to set up certain drills on one field, have goalie practice on one field, and then they move to another field to do short-sighted games and things of that nature, or other types of training, practicing set pieces, et cetera, things like that. So they would potentially be on two fields, but it's the same population of 30 players and the same coaches, just distributed over two fields. So we had gotten through that, and I had answered some questions from the board, and that's basically the summary, unless there's any additional information you'd like me to provide at this time.
No, we can proceed with public questions. If any members of the public have questions for Mr. Amoroso on the schedule, we're looking for questions pertaining to the schedule, not comments. And if you could state your name and spell your last name, and proceed with your questions. Thank you.
My name is Alfred DeMiro. I'm at 2 Aldrich Court.
Could you spell your name, please?
Dimiero. Sir, when the engineer was up here, unrelated to the schedule, I asked him who could answer some questions unrelated to the schedule. And he said, Mr. Amoroso. So I hope I would be given leeway to question him on some other matters. I'll ask the questions and you can tell me if it's a problem. Okay. Mr. Amoroso, hello.
Good evening.
As I recall, you were at the Westin Hotel back last year.
That's correct.
Okay. And I think you were involved when the Township Committee adopted the zoning ordinance. Do you recall that in those presentations, the Red Bulls said that the front office would be moving to the headquarters building?
That is correct.
Okay. Were you a participant in the decision to change that plan?
Yes.
And why was that decision made?
Primarily because of phasing of the project. As you can see, getting back to something that I don't have access to at the moment, but the phasing plan, the Academy building would be built at a separate time, and there was a need for other space to be utilized for the professional teams. So we made a decision to offer up a alternative to the third floor space to include regeneration space for the first team.
And when that second building is built, that dorm building, which is in phase 2,
Correct.
is there a plan to bring the front office to the headquarters building?
I can't foresee, I don't know is the best answer I can give you at this point.
Okay. When it was decided that the 100 front office people were not coming to the headquarters building, was any consideration given to reducing the size of the building or the height of the building?
No.
Why?
I'm sorry, sir. Would this be appropriate for a different time? This doesn't really need to do with the schedule. Is there another time where these questions
No,
can be asked?
this was something
How
I had,
long will this line of questions
this won't
go on?
be real long, but he answered that question. There was no consideration given to reducing the height of the building or the size of the building.
That's correct, because the third floor was designated for an alternate use.
And that was more dormitory space.
Regeneration space for the first team.
We heard the word dormitory the other day. Is that different?
Dormitories would be for the academy team, and that's in the building that's in phase 2.
Didn't we hear that the professional team was going to have dorm space in the headquarters?
I would not use the term dormitory because they're not living there. They're not staying there. It's called regeneration space that allows them to recover after practices, after away games. Is very short term. It's similar to a hotel room where it'd be a very short term stay.
Now, talking about the usage of the fields, just so we're clear, in your mind, how many fields at most will be used at one time?
Four or five.
And you said that the Red Bulls wanted 9 fields because of maintenance issues. Is that fair?
That's one of the issues, obviously.
Okay. You have natural grass fields and you have artificial turf fields, correct?
Correct.
Is one type of field more maintenance intensive than another?
Yes, obviously, a grass field requires the grass to be cut, where an artificial turf field does not.
Did you consider adding an artificial turf field and removing a natural turf field so that
No.
the number of
No.
fields could be reduced?
No.
Why?
Simply put, the professional teams will not practice on artificial turf fields, nor will the academy teams.
The siting of the headquarters building, was the architect involved in
Sir,
the?
this is not a scheduling question.
Okay, but it's still
Please.
important, and we were
The
told he's
architect will be here.
pardon me?
The architect will be here later on.
But this was the decision maker. This was he was part of the decision making, and I think the architect may have indirect knowledge of things. This gentleman, with all due respect, has direct knowledge. I'm not going to be belaboring the points, but he has direct knowledge of the decisions that were made. Okay, let me move on.
I do want to remind, I did, of course, we give leeway. We always want to give leeway, and we gave leeway. These questions were not, addressed to the schedule. Mr. Amorosa did testify earlier. I think if he wanted to ask those questions, he could have,
did, you're
because they
right.
were operational questions. And I think we should move on to the
Okay, well,
schedule.
let me try this. How many other MLS clubs are there, sir, in addition to the Red Bulls?
27? 27.
Okay. And do they all have training facilities?
I truthfully do not know the answer to that, but I would say the majority of them do have their own facility, or they use or rent a facility to train, because they all train someplace.
Is it the Red Bulls' intention to abandon Hanover once once Morris Township's approved?
Well, abandon is a harsh word, but leave, yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the website mlssoccer.com?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And I went on that site to look at what other teams had as their training facilities.
So
Are you-
this really doesn't relate to the application
Oh,
in
this
front
is-
of us.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt. Are you the architect as well?
No, I am not.
So with all due respect, he was a decision maker integral in
understand that.
deciding how many fields to put right by our home. And I want to try to get a clear picture of how they settled on 9. And I would like to point out that many other teams, a dozen other teams at least, have fewer training fields, even though their facilities
That
are
may be
new.
true, but they're making their business decisions and they're presenting their business decisions to us. And so we need to look at the application based upon their business decisions.
Right, but I'm a taxpayer 200 feet from their headquarters building. And from what I can see,
You're beginning to
Okay.
provide backup comment.
it would appear that, well, I have to see if I can continue the questioning. So I'll try to limit the comment, but it would,
Really at your discretion on directing the flow of the
I
public.
understand. I mean, I want to be courteous to the questioners and to the public. At the same time, I want to keep the program going, and there's been other opportunities, there were other
Well, let me-
chances to ask these questions.
okay, I'm not sure who else I'll ask these questions to. So since he's been the operational head of this, but would you agree that there are at least 10 other Major League Soccer teams that get by with fewer than 9 fields?
If that's the number that you came up with, I can't argue with it. I don't know. I did not take a poll of the rest
Okay.
of the league.
And I'll just read off the teams and you tell me if you're aware. Atlanta.
I think it's
No.
immaterial. Whatever you're asking there is immaterial, whether or not there were 10 other teams. Here's the thing. I'll tell you right now, sir, we wanted to put 12 fields on that site. We settled on 9 because that's what fits. And that's what we need to operate. So leave it at that.
Well, 7 fit also, don't they?
1 fits as well.
That's even better.
Okay, I regret that this has been cut off, but I'll save the comments for when I'm allowed to be sworn in and make comments.
Okay, thank you.
Would also advise members of the public no open displays or cheering of any of the public questioning. You're supposed to, although the public is allowed to say their piece, we're trying to conduct ourselves with some level of decorum as if we were in a court of law. The witnesses provide sworn testimony. Please be respectful of the applicant and the professionals.
I'm Larry Kessler, Kessler. I live at 1 Aldridge Court. I guess my home is the most affected by all of this. On all sides, I'm surrounded by the bulls. I'd like to know, we're talking about the Hanover Field, at what point you gave us a schedule of your construction, but you didn't tell us at what point you plan to abandon the Hanover Fields.
When this site becomes operational, we would leave Hanover.
Well, is that 1 field, 3 fields, 5 fields? What is operational?
Phase 1 completion.
So at the end of phase 1, you'll most likely abandon Hanover.
Yes, we would leave Hanover at that time or thereabouts.
Now, I don't know if this is appropriate at this time, but it's important to me. Can you repeat again what you're going to do with Field 9?
Field 9 is to be constructed as part of phase 3 of the project, and that would be primarily used for the youth programs. So that, when we talked about the camps that were run in the summertime, we would run those camps on that field. And then during the school year at different times when there's vacations in the school calendar, the youth programs runs camps. So that would be a 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. operation on that side only.
And you currently program that the youth operation into the fields that you currently operate in Hanover?
To some extent, yes.
What does that mean, some extent?
Because of the usage of the fields by the professional teams and the other academy teams, they always can't get in the number of camps that they want to.
Okay. I believe at some point we were told that there was going to be an indoor facility that can be used for practice.
That's correct. There is an indoor facility that is a half indoor field that is part of the phase 2.
Is there any reason when necessary that half field cannot be used for the youth?
It's primarily to be used in inclement weather, so it could be, yes.
So in other words, instead of 9 fields, you have 10 fields.
9.5.
Well, that half field could replace field 9 if necessary. If you can't fit them in on the other fields, 1 week, you could put them in that half field if you didn't have field 9.
That is possible.
I think that's something should be considered. I had some other questions. I don't know if they're appropriate at this time, but there were a number of questions in the past weeks about the FCC, about the lighting, which I know you're going to have a lighting presentation, about the noise, et cetera. And a number of the answers were, we're studying that. I wonder at what point you're going to present the outcome of those studies.
Well, the only thing that would be studied at this point is if there's any additional need for sound attenuation to meet the township noise ordinances.
Okay. Also was brought up about the meeting we had at the hotel and this video that you spent a lot of time preparing. And it was suggested that we as the public saw it, but the committee never saw it. At what point do you plan on showing that video to the committee? I think it's very important. They're voting on something that they don't know what it's going to look like unless they see the video.
I believe the video was shown the first evening when, after Mr. de Grand Prix's presentation.
I don't believe so. I was here. The only place I saw the video was at the hotel prior to this committee
Mr.
meeting.
Kessler, your son chastised me for showing the video. He said he didn't want to see the video again, so we did show the video.
Andrew Kessler, I interrupt. It was the video to our community that you had graphic designs, what it's going to look like from Aldrich Court, from Delano Court.
Now we're getting into testimony though about background.
He's
that
asking
led
that's
into
important.
to a committee meeting that a lot of these board members were not present for.
And we,
That's what we're asking, could they be shown the same information you were?
So as a point,
and we have said this a number of times, and we will show you the perspectives. We have them as part of our, they're part of our presentation. The architect will present them, and the landscape architect will go through all the perspectives. from all-
Okay, so the committee will get to see the video.
Better than what you.
Okay, that's,
but as a point of
They're
class,
not videos,
Yeah.
they're more, single shot perspectives
Correct.
from different areas.
okay. And when you discussed Field 9 previously, you said there would never be lighting, and you said it was going to only operate from 10 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. Is there any way, if that field is approved, because we don't know if it's going to be approved yet, that can be stipulated in this application?
I believe the time frame I used was 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. But I would not have a problem with that being stipulated and that no lights be put allowed on that field.
Okay, I would appreciate
And
that.
I would also stipulate the Monday to Friday usage only.
Okay. That, I assume the attorney is going to stipulate that in the
Stipulate things you
application?
didn't even ask for. We can give those away later.
The board can obviously include limitations
Sorry.
on time and lighting as conditions of approval should the board so desire.
Oh, they're being stipulated to,
Right.
so.
So that can be thrown into the resolution ultimately.
Apologize.
You also, or somebody mentioned that because of the ongoing construction, the berm opposite my house in Stockton would probably not be completed till all the construction was done. Does that mean I'm going to have 6-7 years without a berm and have all this construction and equipment going back and forth for 6-7 years?
No, the berm would be completed at the end of phase 1. We would also look to advance that as soon as possible during construction to get it completed prior to the completion of phase 1, but that work would be done during phase 1, which is in the early 2-year time frame.
Okay, I believe that's different than what was said at the last meeting, but that would be fine. Let's see if I had anything else. I would like to repeat about that field 10 being used instead of 9 when necessary, and that 9 should be able, you should be able to fit it in. If you're fitting it in now in 4 or 5 fields, you should be able to fit it in 9 fields rather than 10.
Right, Mr. Kessler, phase 1 only includes fields 1 through 8. Phase 2 includes the indoor field. Phase 3 includes field 9. So it's 5 years down the road before field 9 is ever constructed.
So for 5 years, you'll be able to operate with that without field 9. So why do you need field 9 at all? If it's not that important to you, why not just drop it?
For the simple reason that it gives us operational expediency when the time comes. Obviously, we could do a lot of things as we are now in Hanover on 4 fields, but having the additional fields will allow us to operate more, competently as a professional organization to allow fields to regenerate, the fields to be used at different times, fields to, just have the capability of being flexible with scheduling as well to allow everything to be, the events and the organizations that are involved in the club to have full capability of the facility.
Well, I would ask that you revisit the number of fields, and when you can't fit the youth group in, then go to your field 10, your indoor field if you have to once in a while. I would hope you would consider that. Let's see. That's really all I have at the present time. And I just like, to say that we hope you'll be successful, and we don't want to block you, but we want to maintain our neighborhood too. I appreciate your consideration.
We understand.
Thank you.
We take all your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler.
Don McHugh, 10 Aldridge Court. Do you operate a youth facility in Hanover right now?
Well, we operate our professional and academy program in Hanover on on Melanie Lane.
All right, but the specific youth group that's going to operate on Field 9, are they currently operating over in Hanover?
Well, it's not a particular youth group. It's a youth program. So there's, I want to qualify that it's not a particular club, but it's part of the organization where it's the youth program training group that operates these camps. So yes, they do operate at Hanover at different times throughout the year.
They do?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you feel that it's absolutely necessary that you have Field 9 to accommodate that use?
Yes.
But you can wait 5 years for that to happen.
Yes.
Are those youth groups going to operate in the other 8 fields at all during the 5 years?
They would operate probably on Field 5 during that time.
All right. Field 9 seems to be the problem field here, just for, environmentally, et cetera. But anyway, I need to clarify a point that I asked for at the last meeting. At the last meeting, I asked confirmation that the service road was going to be used during construction exclusively, rather than the other roads. Then when there was further testimony, I think it was from you, there was talk about a gate on Prescott coming into the back. Is that available to the public also, that gate?
Well, I guess it's hard to describe without having the drawing up, but very, very simply, the service road that currently runs from Columbia along the north side of the site and then along the west side of the site to connect to Prescott will only be open for traffic from Columbia Road to the first sets of parking lots. Then it'll be blocked off and only used as a service road for maintenance purposes from that location on the north side of the site to Prescott. So it will not be open to the public at all.
Fine. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. Sue Sarcelli, 9 Green Knolls Road. Mr. Amorosa, I know right now, do you hold receptions for season ticket holders? Do you hold receptions for season ticket holders at your facility right now?
It's entirely possible. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, I was just wondering where that would, okay, if you did, hypothetically, where would that show up in such a busy schedule? I mean, would it be, if you did have that kind of an event, would it be on a weekend or would it be during the weekdays at night?
If there was something that was done specific for season ticket holders, it would be small groups and it would probably be on the weekend and indoors.
Okay. And then the same thing would hold true if you had any sponsor partners that you were holding an event, it would be the same kind of idea, the same time frame?
It could be both indoor or outdoor, but yes, it would be, they could be at the facility.
And limited grouping of how much, like?
I would say less than 100.
Okay, less than 100. Okay, fair. And then do you host or are you planning on, let me put it this way, at the new facility, are you planning on hosting international friendly teams, pro soccer teams that are working like playing at the World Cup, world matches in the Metro New York area?
Yes, that is certainly part of our business model.
Great. Okay. And where would that fall? Again, on this busy schedule, I'm just trying to figure out where you're going to put that kind of stuff. Would that again be a weekend or a weeknight? Where would that fall on your grid?
If when the World Cup comes around, there is a break in the MLS schedule at that time. So the international teams that would be in town for that time would be certainly able to be accommodated on site, one team probably at a time. Anytime in the morning hours, because they usually would practice morning or afternoon, and there's certainly space to fit them in.
Okay. And then these training sessions, they're not like full-blown games, are they?
No.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second, please. And At any point, does the Red Bulls organization ever plan to rent out any portion of their new facility to outside events, for example, but not limited to weddings, graduations, birthday parties, fundraisers, or marching bands?
Out of that list, the only one I would say no to would be marching bands. But if we did do any of those, they would be indoors.
Oh, okay, so any of those rent things would be an indoor thing either. Okay. I'm just thinking about hearing stuff out on the fields, that's all.
Understood.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your time. And I only answered questions, I only asked questions tonight.
Thank you.
Andrew Kessler, 11 Wolf Road. Mr. Amoroso, could you explain to us the difference between training facility and a full sports complex? Because from what you're answering us tonight, it no longer sounds like a training facility. You're going to host World Cup, you're going to have weddings there. And from the meeting you gave us at the Westin, it was a training facility, and now this is blown up to a large sports complex in the nation, of first of its kind, from what we're hearing.
Quite frankly, the addition of any other extraneous, first of all, the first business that Red Bull New York is involved in is the development of professional athletes for the playing soccer. And that includes from the academy programs through the professional league. So that is the number one priority. So that will take precedence over any other activity. So there's, I don't want people to get the idea that we're, opening up a book to have weddings every other weekend. That is not the case. We've had Red Bull Arena has been open now for almost 15 years. And in that time, we've had like 2 weddings there because we've had soccer people that really wanted to get married in a soccer arena. So that's the kind of thing that you're looking at there. So that is not part of our business model to go out there and solicit, anything into a great extent to open it up to all other type of. It's not a catering facility. It's ultimately what I'm trying to say. So yes, as part of the business model, we are part of U.S. Soccer. We are part of the international FIFA in the sense that when it comes to the World Cup events that will be happening in 2026, we hope to be able to be a venue that we will host international teams to practice at our facility. So that is part of our business model to have that happen. And in addition to our primary purpose, which is the development of soccer athletes from the academy level through the professional level.
So may I ask, is it still going to be called, what is your official name of what it's going to be called in Morris Township? Because it doesn't technically sound like just a training facility.
I think you're parsing words. Yes, we changed the name to Red Bull New York Training Complex because it's bigger than Hanover, and we wanted to have a new name as well.
Okay, on to the schedule, which the question's what we wanted to talk about. So right now you're operating the schedule, what we see now, that's off of 4 fields, correct?
Correct.
So going to 9.5, 10 fields, that's going to more than double, if that, correct? So this really is not a true example. It's what you're operating under just 4 fields.
No, that's not correct. The schedule will not markedly change because the teams don't change. The only thing, as I mentioned in the last meeting when I was questioned by a board member, the thing that will change in phase 3 when the girls team women's professional team and girls academy comes online, we would have that additional capacity to hold their practices and their trainings at the facility as well. But beyond that, this is what you see. The Red Bull New York consists of the MLS first team, a MLS second team called MLS Next, and then the academy program, which is 5 separate teams, and then as youth programs that goes along with it. And as the blue dot shows up there on the map that you have right in front of you, we do have a tenant, Gotham FC, which is part of the NWSL, the Women's Professional League. They are a tenant currently at Hanover, and we're planning that they would continue with us in Morris Township.
But as of now, you're saying the schedules remain the same off of 4 fields, and to piggyback everyone else, you're increasing to almost 10 fields. And from what everyone says, field 9 is the big contingency. Did you ever consider donating that back to the township as being a good neighbor to keep it open field? We still consider it the Great Lawn or the gateway to Morris Township. As we all know, developing of land and leaving things in open space. Was that ever a consideration of not developing that parcel?
No,
Because it's a business decision, correct? Not a community decision.
it's available land for development.
And when, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but you still, and I appreciate your team's very philanthropic, you give back to the community, you help the youth. So our question to you, we're going to be your neighbors. We're not wishing you any ill will. We want you to succeed. We're going to be neighbors. But to be philanthropic and to give back to our community, that Field 9 means a lot to us if you would keep it as open land.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, Joan Silverman, 3 Delano. I have a question. Up in Hanover, what time do you play till? Until what time do you use the fields?
As the schedule's indicated, there's generally practices, academy practices, or other pre-academy practices that go as late as 9:30 in the evening.
Okay, and then the lights go off at 10, you said?
Yes, the
Okay.
lights are always off a half hour after the end of practice to allow the field to be cleared and everybody to be safely in the building.
Okay, so now Hanover's more of a commercial area. Here, you're going to be literally in the middle of a residential area, literally. You know, we have the hill people and the people down the west side. Would you consider turning off the lights earlier and stopping the whistles earlier? Just move everything up an hour?
I think, leaving the contingency and the ability to have flexibility to 10 p.m. every evening works. I think, as you can see, as the schedule shows, it's not every evening that the lights would be on past 9:30 or past even 10 o'clock. Well, obviously 10 o'clock is the curfew. So, I think from that perspective, I think that's one thing you have to look at is that, the lights are scheduled to be on when there's practice. And when there's nobody practicing, the lights are off. And in addition to that, whatever field is being used is the only light field that would be lit at that time. Not all 4 fields would be lit at the same time.
Okay, but I just, are you considering that you're in a residential area now with your scheduling? The person that makes this?
Yes.
You are? Okay. I know to some people, 10 o'clock would be late to have those bright lights on and the noise whistle. Just saying. I know it's a comment, but I'm just saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Rich Tangle, 16 Featherly Road.
I'm sorry, could you spell that?
Rich Tangle, 16 Featherly Road. I've been at the podium before. Mr. Amoroso, thank you. Regarding the schedule that I received a paper copy at the last meeting. So it says sample fall training schedule and so forth, training schedule. But this is really a game schedule too, because I see there's games noted on the weekend. And so is this really indicative of how the site will be utilized? As I think I just heard you say this is what you do at Hanover now with 4 fields. So now you have more than double the number of fields. And it sounds like the schedule is open to your will. Is that correct? So how busy will the schedule be? How much more painted up will it get at the new facility?
It won't get more painted up than what you see, other than, as I indicated, when the women's professional team and the girls' academy teams come online. And quite frankly, if the women's professional team comes online, we most likely will not have a relationship with Gotham FC at that time. So the women's professional team would take the Gotham FC schedule that you're seeing. The extent of it on the girls' academy side, they would probably be the same thing, except that would start, obviously, when you're starting up an academy, you start with the lowest team, the U12s, and every year you add a team. So it would be 5 years before it's fully up to a full girls' academy schedule. And yes, it does include the matches that are shown on Saturdays and Sundays, which are the academy matches and in different timeframes. And yes, you know, I guess I have to go back to one thing. We talked about fields and fields usage. You know, I keep wanting to impress this upon everyone that fields 1 and 2 are for the MLS first team. Fields 3 and 4 are for the other professional teams, whether it's the women's professional team or the MLS next team. Fields 5, 6, and 7 are for the academy teams. 5 for the younger academy teams, 6 and 7 for the older academy teams. Field 8 is only a competition pitch and will only be used for competition matches. So the schedules that you see on Saturdays or Sundays where there's a competition, they would be playing on that pitch. And Field 9, as I indicated previously, will be used primarily, or not primarily, but solely for the Red Bull youth programs, camps.
So you're here as a fact witness.
Correct.
So in fact, this is really not the schedule. Is that correct?
It's the schedule that I can give you based on the knowledge that I have. I can't, you know, I'm not prescient and been able to, you know, predict exactly what it's going to look like, but I don't see it looking any different than this.
You're saying the schedule will not get busier. As a fact witness. That's what I'm hearing.
Set in stone. It's not set in stone. Just like use of any building, any commercial building, anywhere in the country. It's not set in stone, but he did his level best, and he did it based on what they're doing now. And they don't intend, he's been testifying to this quite often, that they don't intend to make it any busier. Might there be a game here or there? Of course there might. Just like when you're in a corporate building, there might be an event every now and then, but that's not what's intended.
So again, as residents out of here, because of what's the impact of this facility, we're concerned, there's a major concern about that. So we can't just write it off.
No.
That's trying to find, is it going to be double this? Or because the board has to make a decision, is this the schedule, or it could be anything you wish at any time? I guess that's what I'm getting at. Do you have any restrictions? Are there any restrictions on you on how busy this gets?
I don't even know how to answer that.
I guess the answer is no.
The answer is we're not placing any restrictions, just like if you own a corporate office building, you don't place restrictions on what you're doing. We are saying what's intended, and we believe based on all the research we've done that this is what's going to be the use of the field. It's not going to be double or triple that. Of course not. It's going to be this, most likely. But you never want to say, I promise you that there won't be a day or two when it's a little different. And that's likely, that's what Mr. Amorose is trying to say.
And conversely, based on your statement, it could be twice as busy. Also, is that correct? The converse of that?
But
Sounds like yes.
Yeah, it's not going to be.
it's not going to be twice as busy. And I think that's the upshot of it. It's, as I said several times already, the only thing that I see adding to this schedule would be the girls academy teams and the women's professional team, which would essentially supplant the Gotham FC team. So that would, you know, be the schedule. So is it going to be double this? No, it's not going to be double it. Maybe it's a third more, you know, or something like that. But that's 5 years down the road, if and when we field the girls academy. You know, so there's a lot of business things that decisions that haven't even been completely vetted to say that definitively. I don't want to sit here and say that every day from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. the site's going to be used. But I think I can say that yes, there will be activity at the site on every day of the week, pretty much the entire year.
And Mr. Amoroso, let me ask a question. This might clear it up a little. I mean, this facility is being built primarily, as you said, as a state-of-the-art facility for the MLS Red Bulls team, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And if you doubled it, wouldn't that impair what exactly this facility is meant to do, which is to provide a training facility for the Red Bulls?
Correct.
Yeah.
So based on what I just heard, so are the 4 fields in Hanover that you currently use, is that negatively impacting Red Bulls as a team from doing their work?
Yes.
But your competitors have less facilities.
That's not my concern.
That's not your concern.
No.
So they deal with,
Actually, I'm glad that they have less facilities because that means they're less prepared. It is a arms race. In sports, you have to have the best facilities and the best to eventually be the best. So that's what we're attempting to do.
And I think
if you were in the Meadowlands, I don't think we'd be a concern, but you're not. You're in our backyard. So I'm 200 feet
We
away.
understand that.
So that's where we're coming from, or I'm coming
Understood.
from.
Understood completely.
So there's a difference I hope you appreciate.
And one thing I want to say, as I mentioned in my opening statement, and Mr. Grand Prix said as well, right now, and John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, the Red Bulls are way behind. The facility is not up to par. And so what they're doing with this facility is getting in front. Now, I read things about the Seattle team who just built a brand new facility and other teams that are starting to build new facilities. So we want to be, the Red Bulls want to be at the forefront of that movement to attract the best talent. And that's what I understand their purpose of this facility.
In addition to attracting the best talent, to develop the best talent through the academy system.
Do you know how many fields they have, these new facilities you just cited?
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, you mentioned they're being built, but I was just wondering if you knew the details.
No, I don't know any of the
Okay.
details. All I know is they're promotional. And what I saw is their new facilities being come online. The only one I saw happened to be the Seattle team.
Okay. So besides the training schedule and match schedule shown on the schedule, what is the schedule? And you've mentioned a few times about regeneration of the grass and all that. What is the maintenance schedule? So how often would we hear mowers going or blowers blowing a little snow off if you're doing it during the winter time? How often is that noise or that activity heard, or what's that activity schedule?
I would say that mowers, and we're talking real type mowers. We're not talking, rotary mowers. These are real type like you would use on a golf course green. You're probably going to have activity every other day mowing some field.
So it's constant, basically, you're saying?
I would say not constant, not all day long. It would just be early morning hours before practices, usually before the MLS first team practices at 9 or 10 o'clock, the field is mowed. And it's probably, with two mowers, it's what, about a half hour, 45 minutes? About
Okay.
half hour, 45 minutes of mowing time per field.
Okay. And I heard the lighting is scheduled to be turned off 10 p.m. Maybe it can be done sooner, but when is it turned on?
When it needs to be at dusk.
When is that? Oh, at dusk, not if the game is
No,
later.
it wouldn't go on if the way the practices are set up, they're pretty much, they start at 3 o'clock and they run through 8, 9:30 or something like that. So the lights would go on sometime during that time frame based on when dusk is. And depending on the time of the year. So obviously in the summertime, they wouldn't be on to be later. In the wintertime, they'd be on a little earlier.
Okay. And related to the regeneration, like you mentioned, of the grass and so forth, are the lights on, or do they stay on or put on for helping the grass grow?
No.
To regenerate?
No, they do not.
Not at all.
There's specific lights for that, and these are not those type of lights.
You won't have that grow lights on in this facility?
No. I'm looking at my expert at the back, and he says no.
No? Okay. So I'm aware of that. It does happen.
Yes.
In the industry.
It does.
Okay. When are the parking lot lights, or when are the parking lots, based on the way everything goes, when are the parking lots emptied of vehicles, and then the lights, do they stay on all night, or are they shut off? Like a game ends at 9:30, when does everyone leave, and do those lights go on? They stay on all night, all weekend?
Should we reserve these questions for later?
Well, it's regarding operations.
I can't
No, it's
answer
not-
that. I
it's not-
can't answer that question because it's
That's why
going to
I'm
depend
asking whether
on a
we
number of safety factors. Obviously, if there's people working, we want to have the lights on. I don't even know if there's a curfew that in regards to
It might be
parking
a better
lot lights.
question for the lighting expert.
Well,
Right,
it's not
no,
regarding
the
the light
light-
expert, it's more operational, and he's the operational fact
Right.
witness, I understand.
The lighting
So-
guy's not going to have any answer on that because he's here on field lights only, not anything to do with parking lot lights.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. So
So
we're-
I don't know the answer to that, but I could say that, in general, the site should be empty by 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night at the latest. So, we could set some time frame that the parking lot lights could go off.
all right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Amoroso. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Ann DeSalvo for Delano Court. Quick question about Field 9. And
Yes.
so that's for the youth program when it does get completed. And what does the daily schedule there look like? Do the youth come in exclusively to that field? Do they have access to the rest of the training complex?
No, they do not have access to the rest of the facility. They only have access to that site. And, for youth camps or youth programs, we're talking the summer months, July and August, and they generally run from 9 to 10 weeks in the summertime. So it would be in the 8:30 to 4:30 timeframe is when they would be on that site.
So they're exclusive to that. So question, and I had a discussion with someone on the committee months ago about the field that's down on the west side by the train tracks. And I believe Morris Township owns that, or it was gifted to them, I'm not sure. I don't even know regulation size, what size it is. Knowing the issues with environmental and neighbors, would there be a consideration to forego Field 9 in its present location and go to the west track? So since it's exclusively for the youth players, they can easily access in and out off of Con. Is that a consideration for the Red Bulls?
I'd have to say we would consider it, but I don't have an answer right at the moment.
Thank you. It would be a great consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don McHugh, 10 Waldridge. Just a clarification. If you have a match, and especially if the ladies league is there, the general public is obviously invited to a match, correct?
The academy matches, yes, technically the general public's invited, but they're not generally there. It's your parents and family of the academy players that show up for academy matches.
All right. Is the refreshment stand going to sell beer or liquor?
No.
And is there going to be any prohibition against someone bringing in liquor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Vincent O'Connor. I live at 3 Aldrich Court. I just want to clarify a point that we raised last week. And Mr. Amoroso was, gracious enough to agree. I had asked that in the absence of the final fencing and landscaping, which had to be delayed because of, the time that it is appropriate to install it, that there be a more attractive type of temporary fencing put on and along Stockton Drive and by the homes. And you did, as I said, agree to that. When I got back to my seat, though, there was some conversation within your staff, and I understood that they were under the impression that this was only going to be limited to the area in front of the homes on Stockton. And there was no mention of it continuing it down Stockton Drive, which I was implying when I asked the question. As we have noted here a number of times, that these are our homes and we're in and out of these of the location numerous times each day. And we would not want to be exposed to a construction site that went on for 3 to 5 years because of the magnitude of it. And I just wanted to be sure that you're going to do everything you can to put an attractive barrier up there to secure the site, but also to provide a more appealing look for the community.
Yeah, the time frame, phase one is really, we're looking at 2 years to complete phase one. But yes, we did discuss that whatever temporary fence that would be put up along Stockton would have some type of screening on it, probably some type of fabric Green fabric seems to be something that you see pretty regularly around construction sites. That will be placed on the fence, and I believe the statement was that we would put it in residential areas. So if that means extending it down Stockton to the current driveway that goes into the existing parking lot that's there, then yes, we would do that. But I'm not planning on putting fencing all the way down Stockton to Columbia. It would be stopping somewhere at the bend, wherever that goes. And then the construction fencing would cut across there and then run along the service road, the outside of the service road, around the other side of the site.
Alrighty, as long as we were clear on the extent of the fencing.
Right.
And,
And we'd also make every effort to try to get that berm completed ahead of time. And, depending on, obviously on landscaping availability of certain materials, because as you'll hear in the testimony later from the landscape architect, we are planning on bringing in certain species of trees that are larger and than you would normally plant in a new construction project.
Well, yeah, I'll ask the question in response to that. Realizing that the building is going to be 49 feet tall, how practical it is and how possible is it to put trees or something that would be breaking the line of the building that we would be looking at each day we drive down any of the streets?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's better for you, for everybody to see the perspectives and to hear from both the architect and the landscape architect.
Well, the only thing that troubles us, the perspective, as I understand it, projects an 8-year developmental growth on these trees. We're concerned about the next 18, 28, and 38 months.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that we'll have a better, more educated discussion, both of us, when you hear the presentation, see the diagrams, and ask those questions. What year, what maturity are you showing here? Now, I can tell you that, for example, the homeowner board hired its own expert and thought we were planting trees that were too mature. They said they might die. So anyway, let's talk about that when we get to the landscape architect and to the architect.
Experts never agree.
Okay. But it was your expert that said our trees were too mature.
I'm sure you can remember that.
Andrew Kessler, 11 Wolf Road. I'll make this quick. Regarding the berm, I'm not sure if you're aware, it stops, there is a street, there was an access street right across from 1 Aldrich that is open right now. And on July 14th, there's a police report documented. There was a delivery tractor trailer truck tried to turn in there not knowing it was, ended up on my parents' front lawn on 1 Aldrich because the street wasn't wide enough. There's a police report, there was damage. Could that be closed ASAP before phase 1, continue the berm out and close that street off? It's not only just for safety of Aldrich, it's for safety. Harrington parked their snow plows there. They had 2 trucks stolen in that open area that people drove down. You could speak to John Harrington about that. What I'm asking you is if you would close off that access street because it's not an existing street as of now.
I will mention it to the property owner. We are not the property owner of that area.
My question, once you become the property owner, I'm asking, would that be priority of you? I'm not saying to landscape it out, to put grass, to continue the berm just like it is from the one end of Stockton and close that off completely so there's no access or confusion of trucks coming out or people walking in there for your protection as well of your property.
We would most likely barricade it.
I'm not asking for concrete barricades to look at out their front door. I'm asking for a berm that continues just like it is.
I'm not going to construct a berm until we have to construct a berm. If the fastest thing to do is put concrete Jersey barrier out there to block off the access, that's exactly what we'll do.
So you're not willing, you're just going to put concrete barriers that will sit there for a few years that they could look at, that children could jump over and people could get through that could be dangerous. If the board, if I may ask, or you could look up the police report from July 14th at 1 Aldrich Court, what happened with the truck?
Help me out here.
I'm stating a fact from July 14th. That's all, and I apologize, but.
So please limit your question.
Okay. So the answer to me is you're not willing to close off the berm just like it is on the rest of Aldridge, I mean Stockton.
Eventually, the berm will extend across that driveway.
The question is yes or no, so you're saying no.
However, prior to the start of construction, we will block that roadway. And then construction will commence. But we will block that roadway to prohibit traffic going in and out of there. I'm not going to start constructing a berm out of sequence to just block that road off. We will safely barricade that road.
May I
We'll
ask-
paint the barricades green if necessary.
What will we be barricaded with? What are we talking about?
Chain link fence, concrete barrier. I don't know. I'd have to consult with my engineer. We have to go out there, see what's safe, and we'll determine.
So
what
there's
what
still
the
a lot of unknown questions for
No, it's not an
everyone.
unquote question. I'll block the road off. I'm stipulating I'll block the road off.
Unsightly to the homeowners. Thank you.
Hello, Steve Kim, 9 Aldrich Court. I wanted to just touch on the summer camps a little bit. It seemed like one of the things that you said was by going from 4 fields to 9, that you may open it up to some additional summer camps. Is that your expectation?
No.
No? But the summer camps that do run during the summer months, they go throughout the entire day. They go from 9:30 to 4.
It is a camp that runs in 2 sessions starting at 9 a.m. So the kids are on site at 8:30 to register. And you can register for either the entire day or the half day that ends at noontime. So the way it is broken out in the past, and it's been have some pretty good historic numbers on this, about 60% of the kids stay for the entire day, about 40% leave at noontime.
Got it. An entire day would be till 4:30?
3:30.
3:30. Okay. I think though, field 9 being the closest, in most cases, you are talking about going for 1 or 2 hours at a time on a field, right? But in this case, you're saying in field 9 that you have an intention to go really from 8:30 to 3:30, right? Which is a 7-hour block consecutively. Have you thought about what that means from a lifestyle perspective for the people that are living near there?
Yes, and that's the reason why the field was moved further away from the residences, and we've increased the buffering that will be constructed there.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll also look at adding any sound attenuation on the fencing to meet the sound codes.
Got it. You've talked a little bit about the sound codes. Could you just very simply explain what the rules are? I know you've mentioned it, but I'm just not familiar with what the expectations are and what they mean.
I don't want to misspeak, but I believe the township noise ordinance allows a 65 decibel level during the daytime hours and 55 decibels after 10 p.m. I believe that to be correct.
And is there a difference if
I'll
it's
stand corrected if anybody wants to jump in there from the board professionals.
Is there a difference between residential and commercial?
No.
No. So if you're in a commercial space, you could hit that same sound level, but if you're right by a residential space, doesn't really make a difference.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. I think at one of the previous sessions, you said that you would take into consideration quality of life as well. So are you just trying to meet that threshold? Or are you kind of committing to do better than that threshold?
Well, if we add any sound attenuating devices, it would be to better the threshold.
Okay. Great.
I think I just want to go back to in my opening statement. We talked about many of the things we've already incorporated into the plan to exceed that standard, and we'll hit them again. But it's a good question, and we understand.
Okay. And you had mentioned sound studies, right? Do you have an expected time on when those will be completed?
No, we don't, because most of the selection on certain equipment has not been completed yet, and obviously we need to complete that because we're talking about chillers and things of that nature. So that would be the key ingredients there.
Okay, so you're talking months or?
It's part of the design process.
Okay. But you are committing to share those sound studies with the people in this room and with the board once they're completed?
Not necessarily, because it's would be after this application is complete.
But
The key ingredient is that we would be meeting the township noise ordinance.
But how would you know until the sound studies are done?
No, we have to comply.
We have to comply.
Okay.
That's the law.
So we have to prove it with sound studies,
Right.
confirmatory sound studies, which we'd be working with the professionals of the township.
Okay.
And I believe we
And there's a public.
Yes.
Whatever we do with the township, of course, is public.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public? If not, any board members have follow-ups to these questions?
I wanted to mention one thing too about the barrier. There will be a barrier, and obviously, anything we do would have to meet with the, would have to satisfy the board professionals. That'd be part of the plan.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I want to remind everybody that these schedules are illustrative based on the best knowledge that the applicant has at the time. They're not set in stone and are subject to change. They're illustrative. So let's just keep that in mind.
And I do have one question for, I'm not sure if it was Jim or Matt. If the facility is using, if the applicant can be using the facility for certain items such as weddings, might that trigger a variance or something like that? Or is it, or would that not trigger anything that we would need to consider separately?
My understanding from the way that the redevelopment plan was presented is it defined the kind of facility they're trying to construct fairly broadly. And so the question then would become, do we think that the additional uses that they've talked about, like having a conference with sponsors or something like that, would be considered as, you know, incidental to the principal use, which is the training facility? I would say, based on the testimony of the applicant, the board could be comfortable proceeding without requiring any additional variance relief, primarily because everything that they've testified to me, at least from a legal perspective, applying the test that's in the case law, it's pretty incidental to what their principal use they're proposing is.
Okay, thank
Jim
you.
or Liz, you have anything to add?
Just I want, just to be clear though, it was an overlay zone. It's not a redevelopment plan.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Basiopi, would you like to call your next witness?
Sure. Thank you.
And just following up, you know, we'll be ending this at 10 o'clock this evening, or?
You're gonna do okay. I'm gonna vote. All right, he drives.
Oh, me? Oh. The witness needs to be sworn in?
Yep. You swear that any testimony you're about to give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Why don't you go through some of your credentials for the board?
Sure.
And please be sure to speak into the mic.
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Robert G. Zoller, and my credentials are I have a bachelor's and master's degree in physics from Fairleigh Dickinson University. I have 5 published papers in the Journal of the Optical Society of America. I'm a member of the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, as well as the International Dark Skies Association. I've been involved in sports lighting for over 27 years. I have been involved with well over 3,000 sports lighting projects. I've been qualified as a lighting expert in 7 states, including Superior Court State of New Hampshire, and in over 40 different municipalities within the state of New Jersey.
We'd ask that Mr. Zeller be accepted as an expert in the lighting.
No objection. Yes.
So, Mr. Zeller, would you give the board the benefit of your lighting expertise with respect to the lights that are being considered as part of this facility? And also, as you go through your plans, please remember to authenticate them for the board so that we can mark them as exhibits.
Did you want to mark this as one complete exhibit, or?
Should we mark it as one exhibit, Mr. Flynn, you think?
They can do it. The pamphlet can be one exhibit. If you'd like them individually numbered, Mr. Chairman, that's up to you. But this entire presentation, all 12 slides, could be considered just as A15.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So you want to describe what the presentation, with the pamphlet that you put together is in general so that we can mark it?
Yes, this is a presentation that is going to document the type of lighting that's proposed for the Red Bulls facility, as well as the impact of that lighting, both to the facility as well as to adjacent neighboring properties.
8:15?
Correct.
I did want to state to the board and to those that are here tonight, I do apologize. I know you did expect me to be here to testify the last meeting. Unfortunately, my wife became ill and I'm her caretaker. So I do apologize to everyone. I hope that did not cause an inconvenience last meeting. So thank you for that.
You're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Musco Sports Lighting is a sports lighting manufacturing company that has been involved in the field of sports lighting since 1976. They're a leader in the industry. Been involved in everything from local neighborhood basketball courts all the way up to Giant Stadium in the Meadowlands, which was recently relit with LED lighting. So in order to begin talking about how we will control lighting on the Red Bulls facility, the first slide I'd like to show illustrates some of the sports lighting and some of the changes that have taken place in sports lighting over the years. The picture on the far left shows a sports lighting fixture that was state-of-the-art in 1977. It basically was just a flood lighting fixture. The purpose was to get as much light as you could out onto the area you were trying to illuminate, and the light went everywhere. Enhancements to that in '89, there was faceted louvers added to the light fixture, and that took out the glare from the bottom of the fixture, redirected light down onto the field. It reduced the number of fixtures by 25%, reduced the glare by 65%. But that still didn't cover the main source of glare, which was the bulb or the light source in the lighting fixture. So that's why in the late 80s, we started adding external visors to start to cover up both the top half of the reflector as well as the light source in the fixture. And there were a variety of exterior louvers that were added. Some that were added that allowed up light, some that weren't. And in 2005 was the last of the HID solutions. This was the most neighborhood-friendly solution, and you can actually see this lighting technology at Cornine Field here in the township. That's called the Musco Light Structure Green HID fixture. With the enhancement or the advantages of the LED fixture, that has since taken over the prevalence in all sports lighting venues, as well as any lighting venue of any type. And that is the fixture that is shown in the far right, dated 2013. It's the LED lighting fixture. If you go to the next slide, please. Here's what it looks like, where we set up a sports lighting poles with each of the technologies I just illustrated. Starting from the left, the 1977 technology, it took 5 1,500-watt fixtures to provide the same amount of light as it does today with the LED fixture with only 2 1,500-watt fixtures. As time went on, you could see the reduction in the glare from the fixtures. That bright circle from each one of those fixtures becomes smaller and smaller, and the number of fixtures becomes smaller because the efficiency is able to be improved. So less fixtures means less lights to have to see on the top of the pole. And I've included the picture on the far right because that is another LED manufacturer's LED fixtures. And I illustrate that point because to just say you have an LED sports lighting fixture doesn't mean you're necessarily controlling the glare and the spillage from those light fixtures. As you can see, if you compare the picture all the way on the right with the picture all the way on the left, there's really no difference in the actual amount of glare from the lighting fixture. So that's to kind of give you a picture. We're providing what's really the state-of-the-art LED sports lighting fixture for this project for the Red Bulls. What we're showing is a picture of the 4 fields that we're going to be illuminating. That is Field 4, Field 5, and Field 6. Field 5, Field 6, Field 7, and Field 8. Field 8 is on the right, and it's labeled competition field. Going from right to left, Field 7 is next to that. Field 6 is continuing to the left, and then the academy field is field 5 all the way on the left. The red dots that you see illustrate the pole locations. And with the design of the complex, it was made to be quite, I'll say, lighting friendly. It minimizes the amount of light poles that are needed to light the different fields because they're side by side. So it gives us an opportunity to be able to use some common poles that can light one field on one side of the pole, one field on the other. Around field 8, there are 4 poles. They're 80-foot poles. Around field 6 and 8, the 2 poles in between 8 and 7 are common poles that light both fields. There's 2 poles, one near the indoor half field and one down at the bottom. They are split fields, split poles that can split between field 6 and field 7. And then between field 5 and field 6, we have 2 common poles once again, and then 2 poles on the outside. If we didn't have common poles, we'd need 4 poles per field. So we would be talking about 16 poles. Because of the common poles, we're able to have 10. The poles around the competition field and the academy field, those 8 poles are 80-foot poles. The other 2 poles that are on the edges, they're the 2 90-foot poles. I will point out that the poles at Core 9 Field here in the township are also 80-foot poles. There's a total of 172 LED luminaires that are used to light the fields. The light levels on fields 5, 6, and 7 are the same light levels as the current academy fields. That is 50-foot candles, and that is also the same light level as the field in town, Core 9 Field. The competition field, because that is for competition, is a slightly higher lighting level, and that light level is 75-foot candles. As has already been mentioned before by Mr. Amorosa, each one of these fields can be illuminated independently. So you can have one field on, you could have field 8 by itself, field 7 by itself, field 6 by itself, and field 5 by itself. You don't need to have all of them on. Now, one other thing I want to point out, and one thing that was brought out in the Environmental Commission report. The Environmental Commission report, which was quite thorough, and I was probably one of the better ones that I've seen, it correctly stated that the amount of light that was going to be projected onto the fields was a total of 27,520,000 lumens. A lumen is simply an amount of light. It's just like what you have, you say there's a gallon of water. It's a measure of light. So I want to bring that a little bit into perspective of what that means, because that's such a large number. First of all, we are lighting a total square footage area of 348,300 square feet. So while we're projecting a lot of lumens, we have to light a very large area, and that's the ground area. That's not even including the area above the fields, which we have to provide illumination for as that ball is traveling so that those who are participating and playing on the fields can see the ball. If you take the average then of the total amount of lumens divided by the total amount of space that we are illuminating, we get a total average of about 79 lumens per square foot. Now, if you look at a typical bathroom might have 4 60-watt fixtures. A 60-watt fixture, like over a sink or over a vanity, a 60-watt fixture provides 750 lumens each. And then there would be one fixture typically involved with the fan. So you'd be talking about maybe a 40-watt fixture, so about 400 lumens. So if you take that by a typical bathroom size, 6 foot by 8 foot, you have an average of 71 lumens per square foot. There you have 71 lumens per square foot. Here you have an average of 79 lumens per square foot. So it's not something that's totally way out there. It's a reasonable amount of light projected onto the playing surfaces to provide safety for the athletes as they're participating in the sport. The lighting fixture that we're utilizing, as I mentioned before, next slide, please, is what's called the TLC LED luminaire. And here's a picture of what the luminaire looks like. The luminaire has a large shield that projects across the top of the luminaire, and the LED fixtures are tucked underneath that shield, right up inside of the luminaire. What that does is provide shielding for people who would be looking up at the luminaire, and it hides the light source. As I talked about before, with the advancement, the evolution of lighting control, one of the keys is to be able to shield the view of that light source inside of the luminaire. Another point that was brought out in the Environmental Commission report was a concern about the amount of blue light that comes from an LED lighting fixture. Yes, the LED lighting fixture has a strong blue band of light in the blue section of the spectral region of what we see and what we don't see as we get into the UV region. So basically, the percentage of blue light in that blue region from 405 nanometers to 530 nanometers is 34% for a 400K metal halide lamp, and I'll talk about color temperature in a minute, and then 43% for an LED 5700K LED fixture. Both of these are 1500 watt fixtures, so they're comparable. Now, so that means that the blue lumens per thousand is 340 versus 425. What you have to take into account when you're considering this is that the metal halide fixtures are far less efficient. And that's where that term CU, that's called the coefficient of utilization. And basically what that means is how well those lumens or how many of those lumens actually get to what you're trying to illuminate. And basically with the metal halide fixture, you have to add more metal halide fixtures to produce the same amount of light on a lit surface. So therefore, the coefficient of utilization is much smaller than with the LED fixture at 5700K. It's 0.42 to 0.83. So to light the same field with a metal halide fixture, which has been used since the 70s and even before then, you would have 80.90% of blue illuminance versus the 51.2% for the LED fixture. So the idea being that there's all this concern about blue light coming from the LED fixture. When you compare apples to apples with today's technology in metal halide versus the LED, that there's really not an issue of concern as far as that goes. Another point that was brought out in the Environmental Commission report was a concern about color temperature. The IES defines color temperature as the absolute temperature of a black body whose chromaticity most nearly resembles that of a light source. So basically used in descriptions of the appearance of light. The range is between 1000K and 10,000K, with residential lighting applications between 2000 and 6500K. There was a statement that the maximum recommendation for outdoor lighting is 3000K, which is true. The IDA does recommend 3000K for outdoor illumination, except they take an exception to that when it comes to sports lighting. They treat sports lighting separately. And in their IDA criteria for community-friendly outdoor sports lighting, version 1.0, they state that the luminaire corrected color temperature, CCT, may not exceed 5700K as defined by ANSI standard C78.377. So our utilizing 5700K as a color temperature does align with the IDA and what they consider to be neighborhood-friendly lighting. So we're not out of the ballpark, if you would. We're right there where we should be. The benefit of the higher color temperature is it provides a clearer image for you to see, and it requires less lighting. If we were to illuminate the fields with a color temperature of 3000K, we would need to add 30% more luminaires just to achieve the same quality and the same level of lighting. So the benefit is the color temperature is better for the players, and it's better for the environment because it reduces the amount of luminaires required to achieve the same result on the fields. Go back. Go back, next one. No, going the wrong way. Keep going. Keep going. There, stay there. Right. Go back one. Go back one. Back one. There. All right, go up a little bit. Okay, and zoom in. What this is a photometric report of the lighting fixture that we're proposing to utilize for our lighting here at Red Bulls. Purpose I have for putting up this photometric report is to answer the first of the questions that were posed in the environmental resolution or the environmental report, which had to do with lighting impact. What they stated in the report was we should be concerned about the lighting impact in 4 different areas. And the first is sky glow. So utilizing this, what I'd like to show is if you could scroll to the right, show me that column. Okay. And go up a little bit. Okay, good. Now the lighting fixture itself, 0 degrees vertical is shown what we call the geometric or photometric center of the fixture. So the line going 0 to 0 goes down to the point where it's aimed onto the field. Then the vertical foot candles go, the vertical candela values go upward as you would go higher. You notice that as they go higher in the right column, at 13 degrees, you have 41. At 15 degrees, you have 9. And then beyond 15 degrees, you have 0 light. Now, the lighting fixtures themselves aimed on the field are all aimed at an angle, at a minimum downward aiming angle of 25 degrees. Now, to be totally presenting no sky glow, a horizontal from the fixture, there's no light going above a horizontal line from the fixture. Okay, so if we're 25 degrees down, 15 degrees up is where we hit 0. That means that at the horizontal at 25 degrees above the center, there's no light going up, and therefore we have absolutely no sky glow being emitted from these fixtures. And therefore we can meet the sky glow requirements. There is a small factor of reflectance from the field that will reflect back up into the sky from the turf fields. But even as the IES indicates, it's a very small reflected percentage of the light that goes back upward. So that's sky glow. So there would be no light aimed above the horizontal, and that's where we eliminate sky glow from the lighting fixtures themselves. Okay, next slide, please. The second one is light spillage. What we did was we did calculations of the anticipated light spillage at the various residential property lines. Now, there are 2 ways that light spillage is measured. The first is called horizontal foot candles. What horizontal foot candles is I'm going to stand up if I could. I have a light meter, and this is the face of the light meter, what reads the amount of light. The first way is horizontal foot candles. I would hold the meter parallel to the ground, and I would take a lighting measurement. Horizontal foot candles is the standard of measurement because anyone in this room can take this lighting meter, hold this lighting meter parallel to the ground, and we can get the same measured results of how much light is incident upon that point. Now, that's good when you're close to the fields, but as you get further away, it's not really the horizontal component that you're concerned about. It's the vertical component. It's the light traveling vertically from that light pole over to my property. So what we do is we take a second method of measure, which is what I'm going to refer to here as vertical foot candles. In vertical foot candles, we take the meter and now we aim it back directly at the lights. We hold it at 5 feet above grade and we aim it back at the lights and we move it around till we find the maximum reading value. And then that's what we record. And that is stated here. And that's something that after the lights are installed, we test to make sure that we meet that. Now, when we do calculate the spill values, we do 2 things. Number one, we calculate the values with all fields illuminated. So these values, which I'm going to share at this point, are considering the fact that every one of those 172 luminaires is operational. So they're all on. The second thing we assume in these calculations is that there's absolutely nothing between the light source being the fields and the point at which we're taking the measurement. We assume there's nothing there. We assume there's no foliage. We assume there's no buildings. We assume there's no structures of any kind. We eliminate all that. So in this way, this is what we would consider a worst case scenario. If nothing ever got built there, but the 4 fields and every single tree was taken off the site, these values would still be met. So the first property line we did was along Stockton Drive. So if we take the measurement along the Stockton Drive property line, we have 0.00 vertical foot candles. We have no measurable light at all. There'll be none. So, and that winds all the way around all of the townhouses that are over adjacent to Stockton Drive. Okay, next, please. Now, these are the Gates Drive. These are the rear yards of the Gates Drive townhouses. Now, we have an interesting situation here in the terms of the fact that those townhouses are down about 30 degrees below field height. So these values are taken at 30 feet below field height at a height of 5 feet. So we are taking into account the fact that these homes are significantly lower in relationship to the field. Once again, you see the same scenario, 0.00 foot candles, no measurable light. Okay. And then lastly, this is the property line with Featherley and Green Knoll. We did the exact same thing. And once again, we have 0.00 lights. And this is something that we would go out, we would verify and make sure that these values would be achieved. So there would be no measurable light. I go out there with my light meter. I need to have a small light just to read the face of my meter. There will be no lighting there. And it's not zero light. It's not 0.0 light. It's 0.00 foot candles of light. So that's getting to the point here of the spill values. Now, when it comes to the impact of glare, with the lighting fixtures that we have, with the height of the poles that we have, what we have is completely shielded lighting fixtures. At any of these adjacent residences, you will not be able to see the light source in the fixture. So therefore, there would be no glare. That glare would be captured because you cannot see it. You have no measurable light. You won't see the lighting source inside the lighting fixture, and there's no sky glow directly emitted from the fixture. The fourth point that was brought out in the economic report was clutter. Now, clutter was a term I was not familiar with being utilized by as impact calculations. And I went to the IES and I couldn't find a definition of clutter in the IES, nor did the IDA have a definition of clutter. So I went to the internet and found 2 definitions. One, that clutter type lighting pollution is prevalent in urban areas where multiple lights may overlap, creating an overly bright and confusing lighting environment. I don't think we have that here. And Wikipedia said light clutter refers to excessive grouping of lights. Grouping of lights may generate confusion, distraction from obstacles, including those that are intended to be illuminate, potentially cause accidents. Clutter is particularly noticeable on roads where streetlights are badly designed or where brightly lit advertisements surround the roads. Depending on the motives of persons or organizations that install the lights, their placement and design can even be intended to distract drivers and contribute to accidents. So as I say, I've never encountered the term clutter. From these 2 definitions that I found, I don't believe that we have any problems with clutter. The lighting is uniform, the lighting is minimized. There's no lighting that's going to affect any roadways. There's no lighting that's going to affect any of the neighboring properties. So moving along, one of the things that's important is the control of the lights. The lights will be controlled through a wireless control system. The wireless control system is set up by the administration of the organization. So coaches are not responsible to make sure they turn off lights at the end of the night, turn them on, turn them off. That's not their responsibility. Everything is pre-programmed and done. So they can decide a certain amount of time before dusk that they want to turn them on and schedule each field that they would want to turn them on. When they're done with the field, they're turned off. And then all fields could be assured that they would be turned off if they are in use by the prescribed time of curfew. Now, one other thing that I want to bring out, if we can go to the last slide, please. Okay. One of the points that the commission brought out was they felt that the poles were too tall and that lower poles would be a better situation when dealing with the lighting situation. Again, as I said before, Core 9 Field, which is a smaller field, 330 by 180, has 80-foot light poles. When we designed these fields for two purposes. One, to make sure that the light source was not seen by the adjacent properties, and therefore we had to have a certain aiming angle to facilitate that, which we accomplished with the pole heights we have. If we go lower, there's a potential that we might open that up, and you might see some of the light source, and hence you would have a glare situation. Secondly, we have a safety issue on the field. With this large shield on the lighting, what happens as you bring it down is you also bring down vertical light over the field. And you cannot have a situation where the ball would go over the light, because that would produce a safety problem for those who are playing on the field. And I have this illustration here. This is a football field, and what it's showing is a 70-foot pole. And what it shows is the beam of light, or the angle of light generated from that pole. The dashed line going to where the goalpost is, that's the point where it's aimed. And the blue line represents the field angle of light, and you can see that just extends beyond the field. If we start dropping the pole, we still have to get to the same aiming point. So that lighting fixture that I showed you begins to start to tilt up. Now the light begins to go further, and now we see that that angle now goes, and at 150 feet, basically a home would be completely engulfed with the lighting from that lighting fixture. So the 80-foot pole provides, and the 290s, because they're on the outer perimeter, provides the minimum height to achieve A, the total shielding of the light source in the fixture to eliminate glare, and B, it provides enough vertical light over the center of the field for safety for the athletes on the field. If we start to drop the lights down further, and we try to keep that steep aiming angle so we're not seeing the light source inside the reflector, then we lose that vertical light over the field, and then we would have to consider adding uplight fixtures, which we were told not to do because we do not want to introduce sky glow to the fixture. Another enhancement that's going to be done by the Red Bulls, there are going to be 2 rows of lights on each pole to illuminate the field. What they have asked us to do is something we've done in a few rare occasions, is the lighting fixtures themselves are kind of a gray color, a dull gray color. And when you have an upper and a lower, the light from the upper fixtures can tend to reflect off that shield on the lower fixture. So what they've asked us to do at additional cost is to place a matte black finish on those fixtures, thereby eliminating that extra reflection off the lower fixtures. So taking that additional step. One thing that was mentioned in the Environmental Commission report is their recommendation of using dark sky compliant fixture seal of approval fixtures. That can be used in the site, but as far as the sports lighting goes, the IDA does not have any fixture seal of approvals for sports lighting. The reason for that is because of the variables. The variable height of the pole means the variable angle of the fixture. So that shielding, even though you have a certain amount of shielding, depending on the angle of the fixture, the shielding could meet the IDA and it might not meet the IDA. And with all the variables that are involved in that, actually back when they had the HID fixtures, the metal halide fixtures, that's when they stopped putting out an IDA seal of approval on sports lighting fixtures. And so therefore there really is none for the sports lighting fixtures. So that, I believe, is what I have.
So, Mr. Zeller,
yes,
thank you for your expert advice in this field. You testified, gave testimony as to the type, design, characteristics of lighting, but you are not in charge of, and you don't determine hours. So I just want to, so no one should ask Mr. Zeller about the hours of operation. He's here to talk about the type of lights that we're using.
Correct.
Thank you.
And how about the non-field lighting? just the lighting around the site. That is,
No, Mr. Zeller's only testified as to the sports lighting.
the sports lighting. And then who will discuss any other lighting that would be on the site?
Architect. The architect.
The architect, okay. Okay. Now I'm wondering whether we can, it's 8:45, introduce your next witness and then ask questions of both witnesses at the conclusion.
I'm okay with it, but I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking it might be more efficient. It's a little complicated. All right, so then we'll do that. Board members. Mr. Lesso.
Yes, I just have, I want to understand this. This is fascinating. I'm not a physicist.
Joe, put your mic on.
I have a couple of questions because I want to understand this.
Sure.
Not being a physicist, this is probably a little bit over my pay grade, but I want to understand it so that I can make an informed decision. So foot candle, when you measure it, and I'm looking down at it, that's the amount of light that's in front of me when I'm walking.
In whichever orientation you have the meter. That's correct.
So horizontally.
Yes,
Vertically is the amount of light that spills past a certain point.
that's correct.
So if I'm standing here and you created a light above us that would stop here, I can see the light, but the light doesn't affect me on this side of the plane.
Correct.
Okay. Then you talked about a third type of light. There's light coming down from the top of the fixture, and then there's light that spills out through the top and spills out through the sides. And your fixtures eliminate that light from going this way, so that if I'm theoretically up in the sky and the light is at 70 feet, when I go up to 71, if we drew slice through the sky, I don't see any light above 71
That's
feet.
correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Zeller. A few questions. Number one on the lumens. You talked about the average lumens per square foot for the field. I don't have the specific number in front of me, but can you compare that to what would be expected for an average lumen per square foot for a parking lot, to your knowledge?
I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what that should be because it varies depending upon, and I've not really spent a lot of time on parking lots, and that would also vary depending upon the level of security that you would want. There's various levels. The IES does define various levels for parking lot based upon your level of concern for security. But I've never done any calculations for that, so I really wouldn't know what to be able to answer that question.
If you had the manufacturer of what the Red Bulls think they'll be putting in the parking lots there, or an average office park, like what could have been there, assuming they would want security, do you have in your expertise a ballpark of what the...
Yeah, typically a parking lot would be a few foot candles.
Okay. When talking about the light spillage and the spill value, you talked about the vertical foot candles, as Mr. Alesso talked about. You were reading at 5 feet above ground. In places like Aldrich Court and the surrounding area, would there be a significant difference if you were measuring, say, 28 feet above ground?
No,
bedroom height?
No, and that's a great question. If you remember when I showed you the values in my chart, okay, once you hit a certain point, any value above that was 0.
Okay.
So as soon as you hit that point, anything that would be above that, which would be projected further out, which would be higher, would still be a 0, just like what we have now. So if I were to go and do the same line of values, say at 20 feet to, or 15 feet to assume it's like a second floor bedroom window, I would have the same values, or I can't get really lower than 0.00, but if there was a value, it would be lower at the higher height because you're going further up in the lighting fixture.
Okay. Mr. Asiobi said the administering of the lighting is not for you, so I'll reserve that question for later. Concerning if teams went off early, there's a thunderstorm, would the lights go off and how that would happen if this is pre-programmed, but I will hold that question for a different
I
witness?
can answer one point. The administration would set the schedules, but the administration, if a thunderstorm came out, they could turn the lights off through those specific individuals that have that capability.
Okay.
Not the coaches, but the administrators.
Theoretically, would those people be on the premises?
That you'd have
That'd
to
be
ask.
Last question, and I don't know if you can answer this, is dealing with the FAA with strobe lights and red lights. Mr. Barrington talked about it at the last meeting, that there'll probably be some sort of outline in terms of what the FAA is looking for, outlining of the property with the light towers. Can you bring up the map with all the light towers on there? Thank you. Is it safe or reasonable to assume that is, the outside, creating a box of 4 would be what the FAA is looking for if they want an outline of the area? Or, I'm assuming they're going to want the 4 corners and maybe one in the middle. What's the expectation there?
It's really hard to say. That's why I know Mr. Barrington is working with the FAA to find out exactly what they're looking for.
Okay. All right. No further questions right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members? Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me turn on my mic here. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for answering the issues that the Environmental Commission brought up. I know they'll appreciate that, and they did work hard on this report, as you can see. One thing that stood out to me from the report is the reference to the International Dark Sky organization. I was not familiar with that prior to this application. And you said that you had some affiliation with that. Can you clarify what that is?
I'm a member of the International Dark Skies Association. The International Dark Skies Association is a kind of a watchdog committee. What they do is their whole mission statement is to preserve the night sky.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to be a part of that because I feel that we have a solution that is in line with what the International Dark Skies is trying to achieve. And I feel the same way. As a physicist who also went through astronomy and loves telescopes and loves looking at the night sky, that's certainly something that's important to me too. So that's why I'm a member of the International Dark Skies Association.
And so when I looked at their website just in preparation for this, I noticed, and you had referenced it in one of your slides, they have criteria for community-friendly outdoor sports lighting.
Yes.
And they have, it's very informative, and they have criteria in there that they also reference that they have a certification program that the IDA supports. And as I listened to your presentation, it's sounding to me like you met many of the criteria that are identified in their program.
Yes.
Is that program finalized? I know what I saw on the website, it was in 2018. They were looking to get this sort of certification standard set up. Do you know, has that been finalized?
Yeah, they're still in the process of doing that. I know that's something that they've been working on. I actually was part of a meeting that took place maybe about 2 months ago over in New York City with a number of the IDA Dark Skies advocates, and we were talking about and showing them sports lighting, and they were commenting about it and looking at it. So I know that's something that they're spending a lot of time on and working very hard on.
Okay, so the certification program is not yet complete. It's still a work in progress?
No, you can get a certification. That is something that is available today.
Would you be willing to do that with the applicant?
That would be up to the applicant.
It's a question I'm asking.
The answer is yes.
Thank you. I think the criteria that I saw in there, I thought were beneficial, and it looks to me like you do meet it. So having that sort of assurance of the certification, I think, is a benefit to all. Those are my main questions for now. I may come back. Let me look through my stuff here. I know.
Yes. Yeah,
Mr. Bai.
I have a few. Yeah, a couple. Just trying to going back to, I think it was the third slide there that showed the different different poles. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So you're saying that right now you're talking about today is what is planned for here.
That is correct.
And the one to the left of that, that's what's at Core 9 now?
That is correct.
What's at the current Red Bulls facility?
The same one as Core 9.
Core 9? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So basically, from what you said, and I think you said later, is that you can't, and that's a single tier of lights?
No, there's actually 2 light fixtures there in that picture.
So the little glow we see on the top is from an upper tier, that's the reflection on?
No, that what you see on the top, there's
okay,
2 fixtures side by side.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And you don't see them because we are completely shielding the source of light inside.
Right. So there's just a little glow at the top of the pole, but otherwise there's.
A little bit.
Right. I mean, you can see something there. It's different.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually the photo or, but yeah.
Okay. And then I think you said that if some of these lights are two-tier lights, and you would be able to see the reflection of the light from the upper tier on the lower tier. And the Red Bulls have asked to replace that finish with a matte black to reduce that.
That's correct.
But you still kind of will see something up there.
You will see a little something, yes. You
glow,
can't make it totally disappear. I wish we could, but we
Right,
can't.
And also, would there not also be a glow from, fog in the air? You talked about reflectance off the field, which certainly reflects upwards. But, if you're looking through it from the neighbors, for instance, on a foggy day or a hazy evening, you're going to be seeing a glow around it from.
What you would basically see would be a cone of light coming down
right
from them, just like they would see from their parking lot, but from the roadway fixtures and their own architectural fixtures and such. Yes, that's correct.
Is there anywhere around here that has this type of lighting that we could see? I mean,
I could provide some places for you to look at. Yes.
Or photos of what it looks like. It's
Sure.
Like, just simply we'd go see. I would love to be able to go see it directly. The other on the lighting levels of the field, I think you said they're match the 50-foot candles matches. What's that on the academy fields now in Hanover and
Yes.
at Core 9 field.
Yes.
And it's 75-foot horizontal foot candles on the competition field.
Yes.
Why are those levels? Are there standards for those?
Yeah, it's a step up in terms of the class because there's going to be higher level play. It steps up from a class 2 to a class 1, and the class 1 IES is defined as 75-foot candles.
Yeah, but doesn't class 1 usually also refer to the number of spectators available?
Yes, that it does. That's part of the criteria for determining the light levels is the number of spectators. But the second part of the criteria is also to be able to utilize and take into account the level of play of those who are participating. If you could have no spectators on a field, but yet if you're playing a Division I soccer team and the ball is going to travel at 60, 70 miles an hour, you can't light it to a recreational level just because there's no spectators, which would be 20-foot candles, which we take all that into account when we view and determine what is the correct light level for that particular venue.
Okay, so you consider that the competition field a class 1 light level?
Yes.
And the academy field's class 2?
That's correct.
Okay, and that 50 and 75. Okay. I guess I think that answers my questions for now. Thank you.
Ms. Murphy?
I don't have a question. I just want to share some comments. Morristown High School is lighting the football field in the middle of Morristown. And in fact, we used an architect who follows similar kinds of calculations as you. And we did a site visit to Glen Ridge to see those light fixtures they were recommending. And I can attest to the fact that you can see the field is lit. However, as soon as you go across the street, a man walking his dog had to use a flashlight. It was that dark. So what I'm going to say that when he says the light goes on the field and it doesn't spill over, I've seen that in action in a different context. So I think it's a good idea if we can see a field using this particular light fixture, because I don't know if the one used in Glen Ridge was the same one, but it looks like it's better even perhaps than what Glen Ridge might have. And I'm not sure which one is being used at Morristown either, but I can attest to the fact that you can see the field is lit but the spillage of light is not there at all.
You mean Glen Ridge or Glen Rock?
No, Glen Rock, yes.
Okay,
yes.
Glen Rock High School has the same lighting technology as Cornine Field. So
Okay.
that's one step even less in terms of lighting
Right.
control than what's
Yeah,
proposed here.
completely dark outside the perimeter of the field.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Just a couple other questions. Is your report that you shared tonight going to be posted online?
Sure. That's up to Sonia, I think. to post
I would recommend it
it. Yeah, sure.
and request it.
Of course.
One small question, what is the setback of the light poles from the property line?
I think Mr. Barrington testified to that. Can you restate that, Rich? Yeah. Do you have another question while he looks for that, Ms. Wilson?
Yeah. One of the, I was really quite interested in the IDA recommendations. It sounded to me like a good way to reconcile the needs of a sporting facility and the needs of the neighbors.
Mhm.
And one of the recommendations in there was for the lighting to be a mix of automated and manual controlled. In other words, you'd have your schedule but then like we were talking about, if the weather was bad, you could manually change the automated schedule.
They
That
do
ki-
have that. There is also a manual control under lock and key on site that can be used as well. But typically everything's run through the automated schedule because then it keeps it in control, because it's certainly not cost effective to have fields lit when no one's on there. So they
Right.
really can control the light that way, which is internet based. But there is a manual control that those same administrators, it's a keyed switch that they do have that opportunity. We have to do that just in case something happens, the internet goes down, and they can't, they still have to have that capability to turn on those lights and turn off those lights. So it's in the hands of a select few.
Right. And so the principle is that the light only gets turned on when it's needed on the field.
Correct.
And so on those times of year when it's later getting dark, the lights won't be turned on until later, right?
Well, we actually have it where with a lot of recreational fields, what they do is they set the control link to turn the light on 20 minutes before dusk, and it will actually track the time with as astronomically to be always 20 minutes before dusk. As dusk changes, that changes too.
Oh, that's
So
part of
is
the
smart.
automation.
Yeah, it is a smart control.
That's good. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. All right.
Just on the setback distances, two distances, this pole right here to the nearest residential property line is 236 feet. This distance here. And the other minimum, this pole near in the lower right of field 8, the competition pitch, is 387 feet to the property line, to the residential property line across the street from Stockton.
And those lights are both pointed away, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. We've seen other examples of applicants who have their lighting proposals, and at the property line it shows 0.00 foot candles, and you go there, and up until this evening, because of the glare of the lamp, it's hard to know really what that 0.00 foot candles means, because you can see fine because there's glare. And so what you're showing us is that basically there won't be any glare because the angle that these lights are at. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So as a homeowner, I'm particularly interested in the lighting effect on the homeowners in the area, and because they're going to have a pole there and a pole there and a pole there and a pole there and a pole there, and are they all going to show zero glare? Because some will be pointing down this way and some will be pointing down this way, depending on which field they're illuminating. If they're pointing down, would there be any possibility of lights from any of those angles showing glare on the homeowners?
Well, that's why when we do the calculations, we have all fields, all lights, all 172 luminaires are on. So if there's going to be glare from any one of those luminaires, we would detect that. We would see that. We would see a measurement there on our meters, and we would see a measurement when we would be out there to take the light test. Because there's 0.00, that also helps us be able to verify the fact that there will not be any light, there will not be any glare.
Right, so those tests will take place once the facility is constructed and you can actually do an on-site examination. What you presented so far are your calculations, your projections.
That is correct.
Okay, so you will be doing those tests later on. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And in terms of the programming of the lights, because the schedules vary every day, there may not even be a need for the lights to come on 20 minutes before dusk. So
Well, I just use that as an example. They can turn the lights on whenever they need to have the lights turned on. I just use that as an example talking about.
The lights will not be on unless the field is being used.
Right.
No, I understand that. So I guess my question is, the scheduling of the lighting needs to be related to the scheduling of the activities. So it could change weekly, it could change, you know, as needed. So, so I want to clarify that.
They could change this, they could change the schedule, they could change it immediately, they could change it a day in advance, they could schedule if they had something going on for a month or 2 months, they could have it scheduled in there, and then if something changes, we have what we have today, then they just delete it and the lights never come on. It could be done immediately just before and they don't come on.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members?
Yeah, just a follow-up, I guess, to the whole glare view from the neighbors. They're saying the horizontal illumination at the boundary is not all that critical. Well, it is, but
it doesn't really tell the
doesn't
story.
really tell you. It's the vertical. So
Correct.
I'm okay. Does this make sense as an explanation for that? You know, if you put like a newspaper on the floor, on the ground, and you would not see it, then there's no light there. And if you held a book up or a newspaper vertically and had your back to the light, you would not, it would be no different than holding it without that light, without those lights on, if there was zero.
I think what you're trying to say, I think is correct. I mean, basically, you can have something flat at a distance with the light over in the distance, as long as the light's projecting.
Right.
Okay. And it's flat, it would appear darker than if you turned it and faced that same object toward that light that's traveling towards you, it would be brighter.
Right. But you're saying it's the zero vertical, so it's not brighter in this case.
In this case, it's not.
Okay. Thank you.
That's why I don't even give the horizontal values, because to me, they're meaningless at this distance from the field. They're going to be 0.00 anyway. It's the verticals that tell the story about how the light is traveling vertically away from the fields toward the place where we're doing the measurements, which is at the property lines adjacent to the neighbors.
Any other board members? Board professionals?
Chairman?
George. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, George. I'm
Yes.
sorry, George.
I have a couple of questions.
Please, please do.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Zeller, for your testimony. And most of the questions that I had originally have already been asked by other board members. I have a couple of questions which are fairly rudimentary. Can you bring up the image of the fields again with the positions of the light poles? And I think there's something that everyone else got that I missed, which is which are the 80-foot light poles and which are the 90-foot light poles?
The two 90-foot light poles are the two red dots. The one is right next to the indoor half field, where it's labeled indoor half field, and it's directly across on the opposite side of the field from there. Those are the two 90-foot poles. And then the other 8 poles are the 80-foot poles.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of illuminating fields, let's use the 90-foot poles as an example. So if you wanted to illuminate just field 6, you'd want to use both of those 90-foot poles plus the two 80-foot poles that are to the left. And
You'd be using half of the 90-foot pole facing toward field 6, plus the two 80-foot poles that are between field 5 and 6 would be used to illuminate field 6.
okay, so I think you're answering my question, which is you would not have to illuminate any of field 7 in order to illuminate field 6, because the poles have lights that face in both directions, and you can turn on one half without turning on the other half.
That is correct.
And that's true also for the 80-foot poles, like the Academy field, illuminating the Academy field on field 6.
Yes, you would turn on the lights on the one side that would face the one field. You wouldn't have the lights on the opposite side of the pole facing the other field unless you were using it.
Okay, good. And you mentioned an answer, I think, to questions that Mr. Bai asked you. You said you could provide examples of fixtures that are identical to these fixtures or very similar to them that are in use now that we could look at. How would you provide that to us?
I could bring a list to the next meeting if that would be.
Or you can send it to Sonia.
Or I could
she can
submit it.
distribute
I could submit a list.
I think if you submit a list to the board secretary and have it posted on the website, that'd be the best thing.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Is that all right, Mr. Rosiopi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And there was a conversation that I think I partially missed about whether all of this material that you've presented tonight will be posted on the township website. Ms. Wilson asked that question, and I think the answer was it's up to the township, but is that correct? I mean, this material is now available for the township to post on the website, is that right?
We said yes.
We said yes, we would provide it to be posted.
I think the misunderstanding is I always leave it up to Sonia because I don't want to do anything Sonia gets a lot.
Sorry, someone is speaking, I can't hear. Is that Mr. Rosiopi?
What he said was he typically leaves it up to Sonia because he doesn't want to do anything that Sonia doesn't want him to do. But he said it's fine. If it's fine with Sonia, it's fine with us.
Okay, just let me look at my notes for 1 second. I think all my questions have been answered, but let me double check. As far as the certification by the IDA, was this a stipulation that the applicant is now making that your lighting will be certified by the IDEA?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quillen. Okay, board professionals, Jim?
Yes, so in regard to the homes along Gates Drive, you had mentioned that they sit below grade. Was that location looked at in particular where you have the potential for being below grade and looking up into the fixture, to have a potential glare issue because of that grade change below the plane of the field, by, at least 20 feet, I think.
Yes, we looked at a vertical wall there to make sure that we wouldn't have any vertical foot candles from those fields going up from grade, going up through the top of the buildings. And we looked at the second floor and the vertical values are all 0.
So I understand that as far as like a spillage goes, but is there the potential for those residents to be able to look up into, the fixture just because of the angle of the fixtures? As you look in the distance, you may be able to see, glare as far as those old style fixtures, go. I'll use that as an example. Is that, something that they would see?
According to our calculations, the answer is no, they should not see that. If it turns out that there is a fixture that they do see that source, we'll go out there and we'll adjust the shield to make sure they do not.
Liz?
I don't have any additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Matt? Okay. Oh, Mr. Fishinger.
Sorry, I need to borrow Jim's mic. Just a couple quick questions. The older metal halide lights, you turn them on and they would take 10, 15 minutes to warm up. Are these lights instant on, instant off? They flip a switch and the field's bright, or do they take time to warm up and cool down?
They're instant on, instant off.
And what about maintenance? You said there's 170 some odd LEDs. How many of the LEDs can blow out before you have to go up there and replace the lights? And how often does that have to occur?
Well, the typical average lifespan for an LED fixture, and we've done testing on this, is better than 100,000 hours. That's why the Red Bulls and any person or any entity that purchases these lights gets a 25-year parts and labor warranty. So if there's any problems where any of the lights go out or there's an issue with the lights, that gets replaced for them. What we've done to enhance maintenance of the lights is the most vulnerable part of the LED fixture to failure is the driver. The driver is the part that's basically the smart driving portion of the lighting fixture. We take the driver and we put it in an enclosure 10 feet above grade. And 95% of the time, if there's a problem with a luminaire that's not lighting up, if you would, we can go to the box 10 feet above grade with a step ladder, pull out a driver and put a new driver in. But they have a 25-year warranty, parts and labor on that. If something does go out, if something fails on a fixture, I've been doing this now we've been providing the LED fixture now for, I guess, 6, 7, 8 years now. I can think of 2 fixtures out of all the fixtures we've installed that had a failure, because we test them thoroughly in the laboratory before they go out. But I can think of 2 that had a failure that was not driver related, and we came out and replaced it.
And as far as maintenance, do you have to worry about, and I deal with this on traffic lights all the time, a bird nesting in the fixture, or is there any other general maintenance that they'll need to occur? And how do you get to a 90-foot fixture? Is that a boom crane? How do they go up there to do it?
Most of the contractors that do sports lighting work have bucket trucks that can get up to those type of heights to be able to facilitate any kind of maintenance that needs to be done to the lighting. I'm not aware of too many problems with birds. We have had issues in the past in certain locations where osprey have tried to nest. And if they've been successful, what we've done is we've come back with what we call an osprey platform, because ospreys are very important animals to the environment. We want to be friendly to them. And so we'll install a platform on the top of the pole. We put their nest back and they sit up there. And there's one in Tinton Falls, New Jersey, where the osprey's up there watching soccer all night on his little platform in his nest.
Thank you. Those were my only questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. At this point, we'll open up questions. You have 5-minute recess. We'll do a 5-minute recess and come back with questions from the public. Thank you. Can everyone hear me now?
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, let's get back to order here. Yes. So let's begin with a roll call. Sonia?
Mr. Quillen.
Here.
Mr. Nunn.
Here.
Mr. Jorphy.
Here.
Ms. Murphy. Here. Ms. Van Order.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Vine.
Here.
Mr. Alesso.
Here.
Mr. Flowers.
Here.
Mr. Slade.
Here.
Mr. Flynn.
Here.
Ms. Laney. Here. Mr. Fishinger.
Here.
And I, Sonia Santiago, here. Mr. Benoit.
I'm here as
Did I
well.
call? Mr. Vaughn? Mr. Jorphy?
Yes.
I'm just calling names.
Well, you're calling the right names. Okay, well, let's proceed then. Members of the public who would like to ask questions of this witness, please keep it to this witness and to this topic. You may proceed. Please state your name and address and spell your last name.
Keith Silverman, it's Silverman, 3 Delano Court. The total number of amount of light projected with everything on, you said was 27 million lumens. I just did a back of the napkin calculation. Is it about equivalent to like 35,000 60-watt bulbs? I know it's a large area, but that's a lot of light, isn't it?
Your math is a little better than mine. I can't think that off the top of my head that quickly. Even so, don't forget your 60-watt bulb is lighting a small area in a small room in your house compared to 348,000 square foot of field that you're lighting, not to mention the cubic footage over the field that you have to provide the amount of light to see that ball while it's traveling vertically. So it really, and that's why I tried to do that share with that calculation about the bathroom to show it's relatively, it's not something that's way out there that's just this overwhelming amount of light. We're not lighting it to Yankee Stadium. It's going to be lit just for safety, and it's going to be equivalent to lighting that we deal with on a regular basis.
So similar to, you said, lighting in the home of it like a bathroom.
Yes.
What would be the disadvantage of using, well, warmer color than the, it's 5,700 Kelvin is the limit, but what if you went something a little warmer? What would be the disadvantages?
Disadvantage would be you lose some of the sharpness of your view, and you lose some of the actual lighting going into the foot candle calculations. So if we drop back down to 4,000, we're going to be adding additional lights on to the field. And if was mentioned in the report, the environmental report about going to 3,000, we'd have to add another 30% lighting onto the field to illuminate the field to the same capacity. So that means what you're going to see is going to expand considerably in terms of what you look at when you're looking at the field. And that's that much more light to achieve your proper lighting for safety on the fields.
And it would cost 30% more to operate too.
That, and it's going to have 30% more impact. So it's the kind of the best of both worlds.
I wanted to ask the impact to residents in a slightly different way. Given if with the lights turned on and the reflectivity from the field and from the air, it's like, say, for example, if someone was looking at their window, not necessarily out the window, but at their window facing the field, and those lights were being turned on and off, would they see any difference? Looking out at a window that's facing the field, would they see any difference if the lights were being turned on and off?
On a clear night, okay, the only difference they would see would be the lights turning on and off for the small amount which you can see from the lighting fixtures. I'm not going to tell you it's completely black.
You got to remember, we have street lighting already.
You do.
So that would have to be above that level of street lighting.
Exactly. And your street level, the street lighting that you have, underneath the street lighting, that's 10 foot candles. And in between the street lighting, directly in between at the darkest point, you have a foot candle and 3/4, 1.75 foot candles. So you have a lot of light right there on the street. And what becomes more, how shall I say, you see it more if you're in a darker environment versus a brighter environment. So if you had a clear view and you're in that brighter environment, you may not even notice that because you're in such a bright environment, especially where the townhouses are and the amount of light and the level of light there, not only on the main streets, but on the side streets as well with the architectural fixtures and the front door lights, the rear lights and everything else. It's pretty well illuminated areas.
So like I said, if you're sitting in your couch and you have a window facing it, when the lights went on or let's say when the lights went off, because then it's dark. When they go on, it may not be totally dark. You wouldn't even know that.
You probably wouldn't even notice it.
If it was foggy, you would, or misty.
You would see a little bit of a cone, but again, you're going to see that same cone from those streetlights. So you're going to be looking through that mist from the streetlights too, in that direction. So you probably might not even notice it then either.
Okay. And one more question, I'm going to turn it upside down, that these poles will need aircraft warning lights. Can those be shielded so that people from the ground don't see them?
It's all going to depend on what the FAA is requiring.
I mean, standing, of course you can see up, but to shield it from the ground. There's no standard.
Again, I don't know. With every installation I've done with FAA lights, the FAA is like the sheriff, okay? The sheriff dictates what they want. And so we have to comply with what the sheriff wants. And whatever they want, that's what we're going to do.
So you don't have an option. You just separately
Depends on what they
purchase-
want because they rule when it comes to that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Vincent O'Connor, 3 Aldridge Court. Mr. Zeller, I feel that the numbers and the values that you've given us are basically based on optimum conditions. I mean, these are calculations that have come out of the computer. In the real world, we have many insects during the summer months. We have much moisture in the spring. We have snowflakes in the winter months. And do all of these things cause a reflection? And would the lighting be much more visible on any night with any of those weather conditions I described?
If you do have a fog or a mist, you would see a light. You would see the beam of light coming down from the lighting fixture down onto the field. If you have the ability to see it. Now, as far as all the different variables and everything else that can come into play, that's why I say when we do these calculations, we're assuming that there's nothing there. So we're taking it as a worst case. And I could say I've gone out and done hundreds of these lighting tests. And the only time that the lighting tests are not met or not achieved is if something had to change during the construction process, a pole gets moved, something comes up, or something happens, they didn't quite align the fixtures correctly. And that's why what we do, particularly in a situation like this, where there is such a significant concern for light spillage, is included within this package is coming out, doing fine tuning, as I mentioned before to the board. If something was causing a problem with some glare, we would make an adjustment to it to make sure that we're meeting what we've said we're going to meet here. Even if something happens during construction or whatever, it's proven and it's accomplished at the end of the project. So at the end of the project, this is what you get.
Or what about things like insects in the air?
The only thing insects in the air would do would reduce the light. There's a
I'm not concerned about reduction of light. I'm concerned whether it would make the area between the person that's viewing it and the light make the light very visible, or much more visible.
No, I'll say this. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there is a minor league ball field there, okay? And for a week and a half, they have mayflies. And when the mayflies come up, the lighting level drops by 30% because they block the light. Right. They don't increase it. They can't increase it. They're just going to block it. So any kind of insects are going to block it. They're not going to increase it in any way. That just wouldn't happen.
No, I was concerned about maybe being more visible to the person and get more spillage of the light into the community if all those insects or snowflakes are reflecting.
Well, that's why I give you that example. There you have a lot of insects that are coming. Light levels reduced. We don't even meet light levels on the field, much less.
But you'll be seeing the light traveling more from the fixture to the field.
Yeah, to the field. Yes, that's correct, but not beyond the field.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening. Pat Collins, 4 Green Knolls Road. And you've addressed this before several times, but just for the clarification of some of my neighbors who are home, because a lot of people can't be here tonight for various reasons, weather, COVID, et cetera. And could you tell me, by the way, someone from the board, how many people are online or were online tonight? Does anybody know? Oh. Who would know that? Thank you very much. So anyway, for the sake of the people at home, just verifying a few things, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Sure.
Am I correct in saying that you've addressed that the 80-foot and the 90-foot lights, but the architect will address all the other lights and or in the peripheral of Green Knolls Road and the other roads?
Yes, I'm here just talking about
Right.
sports fields. The architect will address any other lighting on the site.
Thank you, great. And one other verification. I've gotten up many times asking for a graphic representation that we were promised at the Governor Morris Hotel way back when of what it would look like from the vantage point of, say, my deck, which is on Green Knolls Road. But Green Knolls Road is a horseshoe. So we have one side that's absolutely close to the field, and I'm a full block away from it.
I'm familiar. I've driven through
Oh, that's great.
that
Thank you.
neighborhood, yes. You have that
And-
one little wonderful Cobra head sodium light that puts out about a foot candle right there at the intersection of the cul-de-sac.
Exactly, and that's it. But
Nobody else would
From-
talk about your streetlights like that.
exactly, and a lovely neighborhood, right?
It is a
Yeah,
lovely
thank you.
neighborhood,
Yes,
yes.
we love it, and that's why we're all here. So I asked for that before, but I think you pretty much answered it. But if, I'm just verifying again for everyone, if I was sitting on my deck and the whole neighborhood was on their deck and assume they were facing that on a summer night that they were playing, we would see nothing.
That's correct.
Great, thank you so much again. And I have two short questions following that, and I thank you.
And that would be even without your big buffer of trees that go right
And
along
well,
that
and the
side.
trees, we realize they're a bit of a buffer, but with 90-foot lights, we're not sure. They're over our trees even, 90-foot lights. But in the fall and winter, forget it. We have no buffer.
That's why I calculate it without those
And,
trees.
right, thank you. And I had one other one, I apologize. One. Oh, you already answered that. Okay, and it gets back again to the FAA. Now, you just explained that too. But as everybody in the condominiums plus Green Knolls Road and Featherly, we're all concerned with lights. We're welcoming the bulbs. We're good neighbors, they're good neighbors. But the lights are a major, major issue for us. So we want this all wrapped up with a bow on it. And it seems the FAA question leaves a lot of room for vagueness. What if the FAA comes back and says, on those lights, we need a strobe light and a red light? Well, all this is for naught, all of us, because, and can I just put this in context, lawyer? Mr. Flynn, Mr. Lawyer?
If you're going to provide comment, you should.
I'm
wait till-
in context. This is in
You can
context.
do your best.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We had an incident in our neighborhood where somebody was floating a temporary cell tower. And the strobe light, and it was only 69 feet, and the strobe light was going like this off everybody's walls for 2 weeks or a week, I'm not sure. And I was ill at the time. I didn't even know it hit me. So I'm wondering if the FAA comes back and says, everything looks great, but you're going to need a red light and a strobe light. Well, we might as well sell our houses because it's a quality of life issue.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Was the strobe light supposed to be on at night or just on during the day?
No, it wasn't. It was on all the time, but it had malfunctioned, I have to say. It had malfunctioned, but at least we got a taste of what it would look like. So based on that, and I don't know who can answer this, maybe the board, you're saying after the application, someone said the other day, after the application is approved, the FAA will make a decision. I'm begging the board and begging everyone, make the decision first, because if the FAA came back and said, oh, you're going to have a strobe light and a red light, then we need the lights lowered. If you see what I'm saying.
Well, I could say this to you. We have to follow whatever the FAA says.
I
But
understand.
if they require a strobe light during the day and it's not supposed to be on at night, we could tie that into our control system so that there'd be no malfunction and it would only be operating when it's supposed to during the daytime. But again, we're kind of tied where we have to follow whatever the FAA says.
Well, what about the red light at night? Because one of my neighbors who I'm speaking for too, he said the people in the condos and the people on Green Knolls and Featherly will be looking at a giant pinball machine if they're red lights. And that's what we don't want. We're fine with the Red Bulls, but we just want a quality of life.
We'll have to see what the FAA says about
Right,
that.
but can we hold off on making decisions until that's resolved? When the FAA comes back, gives a decision, then we can say yay or nay. And that's really not for you, sir. You're
I
just
can't
a
answer
lighting
that.
person, right? But I'd like to say that to the Red Bulls and our board respectfully, that would be considered. Okay? That's
As
all.
a point of clarification, the temporary tower on Honeywell's site was 100 foot tall.
Oh, I thought it was 69.
100 foot.
It was 100 foot, okay. Well, this is going to be 90, and if that's on, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Torture for the rest of us. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Carolyn McLean, MC capital LAIN, 23 Arbor Way. I'm here as a representative from the Environmental Commission. And since you referenced it quite often, I thought I'd speak. First, I'd like to say thank you for considering each element that we put in the Environmental Committee report. Thank you for your visual diagrams in the illustrations that help clarify several things. One thing I'm curious about with your measurements, do you take into account surface reflection? Definitely the Red Bulls did when it came to 2 tiers of the lighting. They're taking into account the surface reflection, so they asked for the black matting. But I'm wondering if you take into account the surface reflection of natural turf versus artificial turf, and does that affect actually what the looms are and what you're calculating?
We do know from the IES, and they have done studies with that there's only a very small amount of reflected light. And even depending upon what type of infill is used, and I'm no expert when it comes to turf, okay, that has an impact on the reflection for both artificial and natural grass. But the reflective component from what we've seen is very small. And it's very broad. So it's very small, and according to the IDA, the light that's the most detrimental to the night sky is the light that's within 10 degrees to horizontal, because that's where you get the maximum amount of the mesoscattering of the light, and that's what impedes and affects looking at the night sky. There'd be really no light within that 10 degree to affect that. So we've done everything we can to make sure that there's no impact to the night sky and to the environment.
Yeah, one of the things we had suggested was make sure it had shields, so I'm very pleased
Yes.
to see that. Another thing that's suggested is to have readily accessible controls. You already mentioned that, to implement variable illumination. Will it be able to be adjusted? For example, if it's just being used for practice versus a game, I would imagine that has to be a little bit brighter for a game. It's a little more intense than it is for practice. Or if they're mowing and they require lights for mowing, can it also be a little bit dimmer? Is it adjustable?
Well, I would imagine they'd be mowing at night. I mean, I don't think that would be the case. I don't think they'd want to spend the money on lights to light it up to mow it. As far as adjusting the lights go, there is some dimming capability there. That's totally up to the Red Bulls if they want to do that or not. What we find in most cases when it's academy or it's this higher level play is that they want to practice and they want to do their games at the same level because it's a higher level than like a recreational field or something like that. So it's very important for them to produce the same conditions as they would have as a game, as they would have in their practice. But that's really a decision that they would make.
Okay. You also questioned the word clutter that we had used.
Yes.
Just so you know,
I was looking for it.
We
Where is it?
directly quoted it from darksky.org, which is an IDA website.
I could not find it. What, can you read the definition to me?
It says clutter, bright, confusing, and excessive groupings of light sources.
Okay.
So it seems like you are not doing that. You are trying to spread out the light as much, and we don't have several poles all along. So it
Right.
seems like you are meeting that expectation.
Thank
of
you
what
for
we're
that,
looking
by the
for
way.
with that. And one last thing I wanted to read, because you brought it up, was I ended up looking up the 5700. So if it's okay if I just read this paragraph from the IDA to clarify why we're going to agree to the 5700 versus the 3000.
And feel free and read it.
IDA's recommendation for correlated color temperature values of outdoor lighting applications have been and remain 3000 K maximum. Street and area lighting illuminances luminances are established at levels to facilitate safe wayfinding and hazard identification while minimizing light trespass and the disruption of nocturnal habitats. By contrast, sports fields have high levels of human activity and ball speeds where visibility is essential, requiring the allowance for design, professional, and end user preferences of light sources of up to 5,700 K. Nonetheless, the use of advanced technologies combined with rigorous design standards, curfews, and variable output controls tailored to the need of the activity, sports lighting facilities can be constructed or retrofit to essentially eliminate light trespass and curtail sky glow, protect nocturnal habitat, moderate neighborhood nuisance glare, and support dark skies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Kessler, 1 Aldrich Court. Just a couple quick questions. You certainly seem well-versed. Who is your actual employer?
Musco Lighting is my employer. I'm a technical consultant for Musco Sports Lighting.
So you're really not a disinterested party in giving this report. It's to your company's benefit for you to give a favorable report.
Well, it's my company's benefit to produce a lighting solution that meets the needs of a particular application from both the end user's perspective as well as the neighborhood's perspective. So from that's why I'm here, and that's why I do that, because I'm in the position where I can really bring the factual data to the table to explain what it can do and what it cannot do, and put the lighting manufacturer in the position where we can be held with our feet to the fire, because what I am testifying to before this board is a matter of public record to be verified after the lighting is installed. And so therefore, there's actually, I think there's a better benefit to the all the parties are involved to get the information straight from the source, and then have the ability to hold that source to what is presented.
Right. I have no reason to doubt anything in your report, but I would think we should have a disinterested party look it over and see if they come to the same conclusions.
Well, we recognize that all of the consultants of the applicant are private firms hired by the applicant to perform a function, and
Yes,
that's
but
why we
his
pre-qualify them
company
as
sells
experts.
the lighting.
Well, others are selling their services, and so
Right. Is there any other manufacturer out there that sells a similar lighting that might be explored?
I can say this, when it comes to control from spill and glare, when there have been other specifications out there for sports lighting, this technology has always been able to better whatever those specifications are. And when this sports lighting is part of the specification, that's an open bid specification to any lighting manufacturer anywhere in the world to bid it, they have to meet these criteria. No one else steps up to the plate because they can't meet the spill and glare control, because this is the advance that it has been, and the millions of dollars that went in to develop this cannot be touched by another lighting manufacturer. And that's what I base it on, not just my opinion. I base that on real life situations with lighting specifications that are in public, that are out in the public, that allow for that. And that's been the experience. And you could talk to any architects or engineers that have bid sports lighting, and they will tell you that.
I'm just wondering if the Bulls looked into various companies and investigated what other companies offer.
That they'd have to answer that question.
Can we get an answer from someone?
Sure. John Amorosa. No, we did not, because we selected the preeminent firm in sports lighting, Musco Sports Lighting. Their installations, there's hundreds of thousands of them around the world. We have them at RBA, Red Bull Arena, and the stadium. We have them at the current training facility. They're, as I said, preeminent and unequaled. So we went with the best.
and this is not a public procurement for these lights.
Right.
It's up to the applicant to choose their procurement methods, and they've chosen this company.
Right. Just that none of us in the public really know anything about this. And I just want to make sure that we're not missing something.
Understood.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Tangle again, 16 Featherly Road. Thank you, Mr. Zeller, for your details. Just a couple of questions. So what sports fields have you personally worked on in this area? Sports field lighting.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I did the middle school at
where?
At East Hanover Middle School. I did.
Is that on Ridgedale Avenue?
I don't know the name of the road. I don't know
Okay.
that. I've done lighting I did Diambola Field at Lurker Park. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a list of similar projects that have the same type of lighting that you're going to see at the Red Bulls, so that you can actually see a comparison of, you can go and see a comparison of something that's comparing apples to apples.
Okay. And you're here tonight as a lighting expert. I just want to clarify, or for myself, that you're really not the expert for all the lighting that's going to be put on the site.
That is
So you're
correct.
a partial lighting expert regarding the application.
Well, that's why I
It's
said
a piece of the lighting. So
I'm
we
here
don't
to
have the
be-
full story tonight.
I'm here to be qualified for the lighting expert in sports lighting only, and that's the only thing that I am answering to.
Okay. Beginning of your testimony, you started off with, I believe, you said this lighting is neighborhood friendly. Can you describe to me some metrics that makes you make that statement?
Because it
Did you
meets,
do polling of neighbors? that
as
are
you've
next to the lighting?
heard a few times tonight, talking about the IDA, the International Dark Skies Association. They're the one who published the criteria for what they call neighborhood-friendly sports lighting. And as you've heard already, we meet that criteria. It will provide a certification to show that this lighting does meet the criteria and therefore does fall under the category of neighborhood-friendly sports lighting, not by Musco's definition, but by the International Dark Skies Association definition.
Okay, you're the expert. In your expert opinion, is this a neighborhood-friendly lighting installation?
Yes.
Okay. Can you define a lumen? What's a lumen?
It's a
You
measure.
mentioned on some of your exhibits here. you
Yes,
showed.
a lumen is a measure of light. So as I mentioned before, like a gallon is a measure of water, a lumen is a measure of light. And every lighting source is labeled by how many lumens that lighting source gives out. That's the amount of light that that source gives out. And it gives that out in every direction. If you have a light bulb, if you have an LED fixture, it's more directed in one particular direction as opposed to all different directions. And then we take the lumens and then we figure out how many lumens are coming out. We measure the distance to where we are lighting, and then we can calculate from the lumens the foot candle levels. And that's what we can verify and measure by having a light meter.
Okay. So I'm a little puzzled. The neighborhood of Featherly Road, Green Knolls, is roughly the size of the fields here, that your 300-some thousand square feet you showed.
Yeah.
Take into account the adjacent neighborhood is even more. So typical home, you'll have a floodlight or two, 500 to 1,000 lumens, if I read packaging correctly. Would you agree?
Yeah. I'd say
So 20-some homes, 20,000 lumens of light or more outdoor lighting, say at night. You're doing 25 million lumens. Now I'm talking about
27
our
million.
neighborhood will have 20-some thousand lumens. You're doing 20+ million lumens at night. And you're saying, as an expert, that won't be visible.
Yes.
Correct?
What won't be
Correct.
there will be no light into your neighborhood. Now, if you can see the field, and I've said this all along, if you could see the field, you could see that the field is illuminated in the distance, and you might see some light up at the top. You'll be able to tell the lights are on, and you would see, depending upon the atmospheric conditions, the light projected downward from those lighting fixtures on the field. But you will not see any light. It will be as difficult to walk down your street when these lights are installed as it is now, because it's pitch black on your street.
So you're saying the light source you won't see, but what it's illuminating, we're going to see. The reflected,
If you
and
look-
that's reflected light?
No, if you
It's
look,
not?
it's
How do
the
I see
same
it?
thing. If I'm walking down your street, okay, and I see that high pressure sodium light fixture that's at the corner of the cul-de-sac where the two streets meet and it's a
Yes.
cul-de-sac, forgive me, I'm terrible with names of streets, okay? You look at that, you can see that there's a circle illuminated on the ground, okay? Because that light is projecting down and illuminating the roadway. That's its purpose. You can see that, okay? Now, that fixture's not shielded. So if you look up, you see the bright fixture because it's a Cobra head, it's not shielded,
Yes.
okay? What you will see with these fixtures, you're not gonna see anywhere near what you see from that Cobra head fixture, and you will see the ground illuminated if you can see it.
So if I'm a few hundred feet away on the second story of a home, I look out my window, the lights are on.
Mhm.
I won't see the illuminated field?
If you have a clear view to the field, I said you would be able to see the field. If from
So
that window, you could see, and you don't have the tree buffer or whatever, all of that blocking it, and you can see through, you would see that the field is illuminated. Just like when you look down the road, if you have a clear view to it, you'll see that circle of light on the street. You'll see that.
So reflected light is visible, just like I
That's
believe a
not
board member
reflected light.
said they could
That's
see
not-
the field of
That's not
Morristown.
reflected light. That's incident light.
Well,
That's
incident-
light being
okay.
projected downward.
There is visible light, correct? You're seeing visible light.
Yes, yes, you
Okay.
are.
Okay. So I guess is the level of visible light. So if I look out my window, do I see like hundred acres of an LED TV screen laying on the ground? Is that what it's going to look like?
No, you'll
Like just a
see,
lit
you'll
up
see whichever
field.
field is being illuminated at the time, you would be able to see that field. So of the four fields, whichever field is being used at that time, again, if you can see it, you would see that illuminated field. You'd see it in the distance, just like you would see your neighbor's porch light, or you would see that street light down the end of the street. You'd see it. Would it impact you? The answer would be no. But because there's no light generated from there, that's going to be incident upon what you're looking at. You're just seeing an illuminated area. You don't have that light coming back, and it's not illuminating your house.
So as one other person mentioned, on a steamy summer night or a misty night, foggy night, or a snow flurries are coming down and they're playing, the lighting is on, we won't see any reflected light on that. But because you said a player can see the soccer ball 60 some feet in the air, won't we be able to see that soccer ball?
No.
We won't see the
You
soccer
will,
ball.
you will
that's
see the
lit up.
soccer ball depending upon how you look at it.
So why won't we see
the way that
all the
the way-
reflected light from the?
I'm sorry, I'm doing
Sure.
it to you again. I'm so sorry.
Me too.
Let me put it to you this way, okay? When you have proper lighting, the lighting illuminates whatever it is that you want to see. That's why when we light a ball field, be it a soccer field, okay? We have to have light coming from certain specific angles, aimed a certain way, so that when that player is playing ball, there's light on the side of the ball that's coming toward them, so that they could see the ball and react to it and be able to play the game, okay? Now, you may see that ball travel through the air. You could go to a high school football game. You're sitting in the grandstands. You could see that ball traveling. That ball's lit, okay? You'd be able to see that, possibly, depending on how far away you are. If you're far enough away from the field, you won't actually see the ball. It'll be too small for your eye to pick it up.
Okay.
Am I answering your question? I'm trying to answer your
No,
question.
I'm still trying to get the context on that just from the scale. Again, 20 some million lumens versus a neighborhood of a few thousand lumens. And you're saying you won't see a thing, but I see my neighbor's floodlights,
Well, that's
front
what
light.
again, I'm
and
not
You're
sa-
saying there'll be nothing compared to that. I just can't
I'm
wrap
not
my head
saying-
around that
I'm sorry.
metric.
I'm not saying you won't see a thing. That's not what I've been saying all along, okay? What I've been saying is, if you have a lit ball field and you have a clear view of it, whether you're in your neighborhood or whether you're at the side of the field, you'll see the illuminated field, okay? If there's a mist, then you'll see the light coming down from the lighting fixture, illuminating that field. You won't see light going up into the sky from the lighting fixture because there is none. You won't see light incident on your property because there is none. But you will see the illumination in the distance. Okay, just as I could go out here and I could look at a parking lot and I could see the parking lot's lit. And if they're full cutoff fixtures, I won't see the light source in the fixture and I might not see the fixture. And if there's no mist in the air, I won't see the beam of light coming down, but I will see the illuminated surface of the parking lot.
Right.
So I'm not saying you won't see anything. What I'm saying is I'm trying to explain what you will see.
Okay, and then your testimony as the lighting expert here tonight is only a partial window of all the lighting on the site. And again, if, like you mentioned, if there's a steamy night or some fog or drizzle or mist, we're going to see visible light, not from the light source, but the reflected light we're going to see.
It's not
I mean, I saw it
reflected,
in
it's
East
the light going-
Hanover, if that's the field you're talking about. I went there one night. It was like a glow.
Which
in
field
the
is
whole
that?
neighborhood. East Hanover, you mentioned.
Yes.
School there. It was a glow.
Let me explain to you the difference
Very
between
obtrusive.
this field and East Hanover, okay? The East Hanover Middle School field has 2 soccer fields. Now, those soccer fields are set on a baseball field and a softball field. When you have baseball and you have softball, that ball is going to go quite high up in the air. So with this technology, the cutoffs are so good, if you would, for lack of a better term. There is such significant cutoff that if you look lower on those poles at about 20 feet above grade, you'd see another light. And that light is called a ball tracker fixture. Because the cutoff, there's no sky glow. What happens is if that baseball goes higher than that light pole, it's lost. The player won't see it, and it becomes a safety issue for that person on the field. So because of the baseball, because of the softball, there are uplighting fixtures on that field. So no matter how high the baseball goes, how high the softball goes, there's lighting above the field for safety.
Okay.
That's not needed here for just the soccer fields.
Okay. I understand your mission, safety for the players. My mission is quality of life for me and the neighbors. But so with regard to complaints, have you heard of any complaints from sports field lighting in your long career?
Oh, of course.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, we've only had this technology for so many years. Okay. Previous technologies, as you can see by the picture that we still have up on the screen, it's great that we have that one up there. There was a lot of complaining about sports lighting fixture, about sports lighting and glare. And that's why there's been a continual investment in trying to make what I'll take the IDA's term, neighborhood friendly sports lighting, especially in our part of the world. In our part of the world, there's no space. It's not like we have, a ton of space to, we can put a field and it's 1,500, 2,000, 5,000 feet from homes. We don't have that luxury here in this part of the world. So that's what has brought about in developing, again, the IDA's neighborhood-friendly sports lighting system. So yeah, we've had complaints, and we've had complaints even with this lighting. And basically, we go out, correct the complaints. I've never had, and I can say this, I've never had a project with the LED sports lighting where we have not walked away and all parties were pleased with the lighting. As a matter of fact, I lit 2 softball fields in Rutherford, New Jersey at Memorial Park. The people, they had light in their backyard, so we went and we made adjustments. When we completed the adjustments, It's the only time I've ever had this in 23 years. The neighbors clapped and went woohoo because they were in the dark. It completely took the light off their backyards. So my point is, yes, there are complaints because lighting it's important to everyone, but there are ways to make sure that, number one, that you're supposed to have lighting that's not going to foster complaints. And then number two, once the lighting goes in, you have the mechanism to ensure that what you're saying is going to happen will happen.
Okay. And that lighting, again, is only one piece of the whole lighting of all the site.
Just
So,
what I'm talking to.
now, did that have FAA lighting on top of those poles?
No,
Okay.
they did
So-
not need it.
FAA lighting, as you know, 24/7, nighttime, all that. So that will be visible. That's to aircraft and below. So do you agree with that?
That's the nature of FAA lighting.
Okay. So we expect that to happen here. So that's a consideration that we will see light, strobe or what have you, even if we don't see all the lumens you're saying we won't see out of the 20 some million. We're going to see basically nothing direct from that fixture except some reflected visible light. And that's okay. I would love to see calculations on that. Have you, one other question, I'm sorry for going late. Have you gone back to these neighborhoods you've worked on and took the calculated or theoretical and got an actual number from 2 stories up or ground level? Have you done that?
Every
And can you share that?
project where I have provided expert testimony to a zoning board or planning board or a township council, once that project has been installed, I don't let anybody else go back. I go back and I verify them myself. I've had Lyme's disease twice. I've had poison ivy a half a dozen times. So I'm out there when it's done because what I'm testifying to, my reputation's on the line too. Must go, yes, but my reputation as a lighting expert's on the line too. So I go out and I verify that personally on every project that I testify to.
And how is that lighting level after construction versus your calculated level?
I have had just a handful where we've had to make adjustments. And like what I've said before,
so it's exceeded.
Most of those times, they've all been accepted.
No, exceeded. They exceeded your calculated measurement.
That's a rough way to put it. Let me put it to you this way. I'll say this. On the vast majority of the projects, we met or our spill levels were lower, meaning better than what were testified to. There was a couple of projects where there was levels that were higher. And as I had mentioned before, sometimes during construction, a pole gets moved because, oh my goodness, we found a sewer pipe. We had to move a pole. Doing different things like this. Things get changed during construction. And that's why we plan to, after construction, come back and adjust to take care of those changes that can and do occur. Like any construction project, changes happen as you're doing construction. So we make sure that there's a provision to take care of anything that comes up during construction to meet what's been provided.
Okay, I lied. One more question. So regarding a full moon, what's the lighting level at this property line from a full moon versus your lighting system of 20 million lumens?
I've measured
What would the difference be?
Full moon typically is about 0.1 foot candles or less. I'm at less than 0.00.
Less than a full moon.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, is Sue Sarcelli, 9 Green Knolls. One little question.
Sure.
You talk about the automation, and I know that Mr. Giorfi had asked about turning off the lights, and you said that you had manual control. Is there also some kind of a, for want of a better word, a motion sensor? Like, you know, when you walk into some places where you walk into the conference room and the lights will go on because it's so that they've always been off and then they go on. If, let's say you've had a great soccer night and there's been no penalties and they're done at 9 o'clock instead of 9:30 or whatever, is there a motion sensor that could say, hey, nobody else is moving around. I don't have to be on until 10. I can turn off earlier. Is there that kind of technology or not?
Not for sports lighting.
No,
Motion
okay.
detectors would introduce all sorts of
Too much.
problems.
Okay. I was just thinking about
No,
why would we have
it's
to
a
have
good
the lights
thought,
on?
but-
And hey, maybe
Yeah.
it's a good concept y'all should work on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Kavanaugh, 11 Featherly Road. I know we're trying to wrap things up. I'd like to just make a couple comments, observations, and maybe suggestions. Thank you very much, Mr. Zellers.
This is really just for questions.
You'll have time to
Pardon me?
provide comment later on in the proceeding.
Oh, no comments, just questions?
Questions.
Specific to this witness.
Okay. It was going to be specific to the witness. I'll just give a comment. I appreciate your presentation, and I'll comment later if it goes on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson, do you have a?
Yeah. I have one question for Mr. Zeller.
Yes.
So in your experience, have you ever seen situations where FAA issues certain requirements and then adjustments have to be made on the site? And do you understand it's a hypothetical, I guess.
I'm trying to understand it. Have we had FAA lights added after the fact to a project? The answer is yes, because sometimes after lights have been installed, after a year, 2 years, whenever, it becomes convenient for a local EMS to be able to land a medevac helicopter on a field. And if you're going to land a medevac helicopter on the field, you have to have those FAA lights on the poles. So yes, that has happened before where they've been added after the fact. We've had some where we had to have FAA lights before the fact. So we've had both, I guess.
Have you made adjustments to the lighting that was on site once the FAA made whatever their requirements are?
Well, there's really no adjustments to the lighting on the site because the FAA light is at the top of the pole above the field lights. So they're two totally independent things. They're not in any way interconnected as far as uses, what they're doing and what their purpose is. So there's really no interaction between the two.
Okay. All right. I know there's a lot of question. I have it myself. It feels like you use the sheriff analogy. They're going to come in and say, you must do this, you must do this. And the Red Bulls are saying, we will do what the FAA requires. But just from a kind of common sense layman's perspective, it sort of feels like, well, if they're going to issue certain requirements, are there things that could be done to improve the site after they've issued whatever their requirements are?
None that I'm aware of, to be honest with you.
And you're saying they're two separate things.
Yeah, the FAA has their own jurisdiction for what they do and what they require because it's the safety of what's required for planes. What we do is we do the safety in our lights for the fields. So they're two kind of separate things in terms of what they do. They marry together because they have to go on the pole, and depends. They may say one here, one there. They may say two. I don't know. I don't know what they say because, again, there's no hard, fast rule that this is what you're going to have. And that's why I can't really say anything to that. And I know the engineer is working with them diligently to come up with some answers on that for you.
Do we have any update on when they might be issuing their requirements?
No, they're taking comments through the middle of October. So at that point, it would be up to them to finish their study and respond.
Can you suggest to them that it would be beneficial for everyone if they could speed up their work?
We filed in June thinking that we wanted to have the information. So
I think that.
I know.
That suggestion may
Just
be-
saying.
That suggestion may be better coming from the township.
Have the board members follow up?
I'd be happy to.
Well, it's 10:15, so why don't we adjourn for this evening and reschedule for, I'm sorry. Oh, did you have another question?
One quick question, Andrew Kessler, 11 Wolf Road. First of all, thank you. Nothing about lighting, very informative, appreciate it. But you're just focused on the field lighting. I guess the question goes to Mr. Barrington and is redundant and Mr. Assiopi. Will we be getting a full lighting, a picture of the whole parking lots, buildings, everything. Okay. Okay. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Should we adjourn this meeting?
I move for adjournment.
Do we have any other business?
No, this application, we need to schedule this application.
Yeah, well, what I would do is I would close the public portion for this witness. And then at that point, you would want to get the applicant's stipulation for any time of decision.
Right.
And also, the board would want to go through when they would come back so we could give the public announcement.
Right. So public portion is closed. So let's proceed with scheduling the next hearing.
The next available date is October 17th. Is that good for you, Mr.
Oh,
Roscoe?
yes, of course.
That's just in 2 weeks?
Yes.
It's in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Will that be the entire meeting, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So for
Okay.
members of the public, this matter will be carried to October 17th in this room at 7 p.m. Let this serve as your notice that the application will proceed and continue on that date, and the applicant will not be required to send any additional notice out to the 200-foot surrounding property owners.
Okay, thank you.
And we agree to any extension.
And can you just put that in writing to me by email?
The
is fine?
extension?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had an agenda someplace. I don't know where it
There
is.
was some other item, I think, that
Through the next hearing.
My
was Mr. Slate going to bring up some other, there was
my
another item on the agenda.
disappeared. My agenda disappeared.
So the board may recall that the Rabbinical College was approved for an addition, and that's currently under construction on their site on Sussex Avenue. And I was recently called over to the site. So you may recall, as part of that application, there were 2 detention basins that were proposed. Mike, if you're able to call up the PDF of the site plan, there's one that has photos of the site. Either one you call up will work for me on that. So there's 2 detention basins. You may recall inside I'll say the L of the building was one of the detention basins. It's a standard, above ground detention basin. They had some retaining walls against the building that helped achieve the grade. And then there was also safety fencing that goes around the facility to keep people out of that. So
I'm not going to be able to hear you, Jim.
These are some aerial photographs of the site. This is the building that's currently under construction. The proposed detention basin is in this location. And as I mentioned, there's fencing that goes around that. You can kind of see the grade, that's been established. So a question that came up is they realized that they have pretty limited space on the site. And they asked me, they said, can we go to a below ground system? I don't have a problem with that. The engineer would have to do a design. What that would do this is going to be a grass area. It's fenced off. They can't use it. What this would do is turn that into a grass area that they could use. I say we're kind of like in an area where, okay, is that require an amended site plan? It's going to be grass before or after. They have to modify the stormwater management design. I'm comfortable reviewing that to ensure that there's no change in the amount of runoff that comes off the site. Is the board comfortable with me doing that change administratively? That is my question. And what that does is they would provide the storage underground. There's a series of pipes or underground chambers, and then the area essentially becomes grass. They tried to make the argument that, it's safer. It is. It would be safe beforehand, as it was designed, because there would be a fence around it. But is the board okay with that change administratively?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve that.
Administratively, yes.
Okay.
You would be authorizing him to oversee and authorize the changes administratively. So you should do it as a roll call vote.
So moved by Mr. Lesso. Second?
I'll second.
Hold on, guys. Mr. Alessio. Motion it?
Joe
Alesso.
Alessio, okay. Second?
Mike Nunn.
Mr. Nunn. Murphy.
Absolutely.
Mr. Vine.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Mr. Nunn.
Yes.
Ms. Van Order.
Yes.
Mr. Alessio.
Yes.
Mr. Quinn. Willis.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear everything. Yeah, I'm here. I couldn't hear everything that was going on, and I was waiting to ask a question of Mr. Slate, which is, Jim, did you say that the area would be fenced even if it becomes underground and there's
No,
and
the
it's
fence
grassy?
is no longer necessary if it's going to be below ground.
Okay, so I vote yes.
No fence if it goes below ground. George, any other questions?
I have no other questions, and I vote yes. You were voting, right? I don't know why the sound cut out partially on me there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
You voted
And we're
yes.
looking forward to the day that you come in and join us.
Yes, I know you are. I'm looking forward to having improved technology so it's not necessary and so that the public can participate remotely as well. Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, the attorneys have problem with that. I'll leave it at that.
And I vote yes. Yes. Next item on the agenda is public commentary. Any members of the public?
Motion to close public comment.
Okay, no more public comment. Any closed session? No closed session? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks on the rabbinical
So.